All right. All right. All right. Welcome back to the live show. Welcome back. It is currently 9:25 p.m. Today's date is the 14th of May, 2026. How are you doing, ladies and gentlemen? We're back for another one. Right now, we're going to be checking out the House Armed Services Committee holding a hearing on the Navy's 2027 budget request. Of course, everybody's budget is just through the roof right now because of what is currently going on in other parts of the world. For example, Iran, some things are going on in Ukraine as well. And of course, you just got to stay fortified for any emergencies. So you want to make sure you stockpile all of those very huge and difficult to build machineries and weapons and all that stuff that if we were living in a peaceful world, we would not need. But it's not a peaceful world, so we do need all of those gadgets and weapons. So everybody's asking for a bigger budget. Army, the Navy, the Air Force, everybody. Okay, the Marines, everybody's asking for a bigger budget right now. So with that being said, we're going to check out this huge budget request from the Navy, and also it's about 3 hours. So, ladies and gentlemen, also let me know what you think about this whole situation going on in Iran, and of course, if you do support it or not, let me know in the comment section. Anyway, God is the greatest. God bless you and your family. God bless America. Here we go.
All right, the committee will come to order. I want to welcome our witnesses and thank them for their service to our nation. Today, we'll hear from the Department of the Navy regarding FY27 budget request. As a maritime nation, our national security requires strong and ready naval force with sufficient vessels and capabilities to deter our enemies. That's especially true now as the Navy is instrumental to the mission of combating narco trafficking in the Western Hemisphere, ensuring Iran never obtains a nuclear weapon, and safeguarding freedom of navigation around the globe. And of course, we have to remain vigilant to the threat from China, whose maritime strength continues to grow. So it's critical that America prioritizes growing our fleet. And doing that requires rebuilding our shipbuilding industry. Years of uncertainty and inconsistent demand from the government and the commercial sector have significantly weakened our maritime industrial base. That atrophy is apparent in both military and commercial shipbuilding, and the statistics are grim. China builds 47% of the world's ships. The U.S. builds 0.1%. This decline in our maritime industrial base is not surprising given how long we have been underfunding our national security. Defense spending has shrunk dramatically, both as a percentage of GDP and as a percentage of federal outlays. That's resulted in a reduction in our shipbuilding capacity, our ability to scale our production, and our fleet readiness. To maintain deterrence and ensure maritime dominance, we need a robust constellation of shipyards with modern infrastructure. It also demands a large, skilled workforce capable of meeting the increased demand for shipbuilding and repairing ships. The President's FY27 budget request of $1.5 trillion is crucial in reversing that decline. The Navy's top line of $377.5 billion provides the resources necessary to restore our shipbuilding capacity and reestablish our maritime deterrence. We began the work of revitalizing the shipbuilding last year via reconciliation. That legislation invested $34 billion in shipbuilding and maritime industrial base to expand the size and enhance the capability of our naval fleet. We're starting to see the results of that funding, and we'll be paying close attention to how that investment is handled and how efficiently it's being spent. Last year, we also made critical reforms to make the Pentagon a better customer for the defense industrial base. We created new accelerated requirements processes that rapidly seek innovative private sector solutions. We cut red tape and enhanced contracting flexibility, and we streamlined decision-making by centralizing acquisition programs under single portfolio acquisition executives. I'm pleased to see the progress the Navy is making on implementing these reforms. However, I remain concerned with the overall readiness of our naval fleet. If we are to strengthen our deterrence and protect our maritime interest, we need to prioritize the 80% surge-ready vision for the entire fleet, including our amphibious forces. Nearly half of the amphibious fleet is in unsatisfactory condition. As a result, we can no longer support heel-to-toe deployments of our Marine Expeditionary Forces. I'm a strong supporter of a continuous 3.0 MU presence. Our amphibious forces are the bedrock of our rapid response force and essential for the projection power that we need. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses on how we can work together to make sure these goals reach reality and give our sailors and Marines the resources they need to defend our nation. With that, I yield to my friend, the ranking member, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Thanks to our witnesses for being here today. I look forward to a very, very important discussion. I think the chairman did a very good job of laying out the challenges that we face. Those challenges are not just with the Navy and the Marine Corps and meeting our shipbuilding, but it is a pretty good example of the size and scope of the challenges we face in meeting our national security needs and dealing with the economic challenges that we face as a country. Certainly, the shipbuilding story that the chairman laid out is absolutely true. We have fallen way behind the rest of the world and really struggled to figure out how to build the ships we need to build for our defense needs. We also have the modernization challenge. As we all know, warfare has fundamentally changed. Autonomous systems, AI, are going to be crucial to meeting our warfighting needs, as is our ability to build the munitions and equipment that we need at a far greater scale, at a far more affordable pace. And some progress has been made. I particularly want to thank the Marine Corps. I know Commandant Berger, who came before Commandant Smith, really took the lead in recognizing this and took a hell of a lot of heat for saying, no, we have to change. He made the changes. I think the Marine Corps has adapted to what the modern battlefield looks like. And also, you passed your audit, which makes everybody around you, 3 times, everyone around you jealous. But I think it should also make them aspirational to do that as well. I also think on the Navy side, I've been particularly impressed with the workforce development. I've been up to Bath, and I was just down at Newport News a few days ago. 3-4 years ago, it really looked like, we're just not going to be able to find the workforce. And we still have a long way to go. We do not have enough people, but emphasizing training, bringing people into shipbuilding has made a difference. We have a much younger workforce now in the shipbuilding, and that certainly helps move us forward. And also, as the chairman mentioned, our passage last year of acquisition reform to try to help the Pentagon get to the point where you can innovate faster at scale is making a difference. We have a long way to go there as well. I will point out, however, I do disagree with the chairman on one point. Yes, we are way behind on shipbuilding, but it's not because we haven't spent enough money on defense. Where we are behind is on commercial shipbuilding, because we're behind on both, to be honest, but commercial shipbuilding is the main area because we were no longer competitive in that space. The economy changed. We cannot spend our way out of this problem, and that is my single biggest concern about the way we approach this. We are still trying to imagine that we can do everything if we just spend enough money. That, I think, is a very unwise strategy. We have a debt pushing up close to $40 trillion. We continue to not be able to support any sort of revenue increases to pay for it. We're going to have to get smarter. And I've used this quote in this room many, many times, so I apologize for repeating myself. But I think we are at that Winston Churchill point. Gentlemen, we're out of money. Now we have to think. The good news is we have really good options. We have very, very smart people. We have modern technology that can show us how to build the systems we need in a cheaper, more affordable way and put out a platform that enables us to achieve our objectives by taking advantage of having asymmetric advantages and figuring out what weapon systems we can have that can meet our needs. That's the way we need to be thinking. And we've discussed this, but All of what I've just said, the personification of the problem is the decision to go out and try to build a $22 billion battleship. I doubt seriously whether or not we can build that. I doubt even more seriously whether or not it is what we need at this point, when we need to be focusing on autonomous systems, on how we can do affordable solutions to what we face. If we continue to spend ourselves into oblivion, we will not accomplish the national security objectives that we desperately need. We also have partners and allies that we can use. And here I know all of you have discussed, you agree with that. But let's look at that as a way to grow our ability. South Korea, Japan, Norway, they are capable shipbuilders who, at least this morning, were still our allies. So we need to build on that, build the partners and allies that we can have to meet our needs. I still see a budget that I've been seeing here for 25 years, which is we have all these disastrous problems. Let's just imagine that we'll have an infinite amount of resources going forward, and that's going to be our solution. That's not going to get us there. We need to make cost-effective decisions to get us to the point where we need within a realistic budget framework. With that, I look forward to the discussion, and I yield back.
And I thank the ranking member. Now I'll introduce our witnesses. The Honorable Hung Cao is the Acting Secretary of the Navy. Admiral Darrell Caudle is the Chief of Naval Operations, and General Eric Smith is the Commandant of the Marine Corps. Welcome our witnesses. Secretary Cao, we'll start with you. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Smith, distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the House Armed Services Committee. Thank you for allowing me to testify to you this morning. America's sailors and Marines are currently on the front lines of freedom in operations to protect our republic. Lincoln and Bush.
I think your microphone's not on, or you need to pull it closer.
All right. Let me try. Can we reset the time then, sir? No. We're good, sir. America's sailors and Marines are currently on the front lines of freedom in operations to protect our republic. Lincoln and Bush Carrier Strike Groups and Tripoli Amphibious Raiding Group with the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit are in the Arabian Sea, protecting merchant ships and stopping illicit shipping by a terrorist regime. Destroyers Arleigh Burke, Bulkeley, Oscar Austin, and Gonzalez are protecting our allies in the Mediterranean against cruise missile attacks from Iran. In the Caribbean, Iwo Jima ARG-MU is stopping narco-terrorists from poisoning our Americans with illegal drugs. In the Pacific, Boxer, ARG-MU, and Destroyer Squadron 7 are enforcing the freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. At home, we're preparing Macon Island ARG-MU, USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, a 49-year-old nuclear-powered aircraft carrier for deployment. On our southern border, our sailors and Marines stand watch tonight saying, "Nothing will hurt you, not on my watch." 3 weeks and about 17 hours ago, I was tasked by President Trump to lead the United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps. My three priorities are to take care of our sailors and Marines, build ships, and protect our homeland. 120 years ago, the Great White Fleet extended America's reach across the globe. We're currently at the forefront of history with a budget that will create the Golden Fleet, which renews that maritime dominance. We have the obligation to give our sailors and Marines the very best equipment to do their jobs. In our historic budget of $377.5 billion, we're adding 34 new ships, varying from small to large combatants, 123 new aircrafts, along with 5 unmanned ships. In 5 years, we will add 122 manned and 63 unmanned ships. We are funding our readiness of our fleet to 95%. We're procuring exquisite munitions that will keep our forces outside the weapons engagement zone while investing in research and development for the fight of the future. More importantly, we are increasing our service member pays, investing in family and unaccompanied housing, child development centers so that our sailors and Marines have safe, clean, and comfortable places to live and not have to worry about their families when they're deployed in harm's way. We have greatly exceeded recruiting and retention goals, and that is due solely to the sheer leadership of President Trump and Secretary Hegseth. Last week, I was on board USS Gerald R. Ford, USS Winston Churchill, and USS Bainbridge as they returned from an 11-month combat deployment in 2 theaters. Do not believe the fake news that claims food shortages, backed-up toilets, and low morale. What I witnessed were motivated and professional young sailors pushing the boundaries of performance for their country. It is imperative that we pass this budget. Ship construction and readiness were bill payers for Iraq and Afghanistan for 20 years. While our industrial base atrophied, America's peer competitors grew stronger and threatened our sovereignty. Their 100-year plan had one goal: total global domination. But only one thing stands in their way: the United States of America. The Navy and Marine Corps are America's 911 force, capable of being anywhere as a carrier strike group or Marine Air Ground Task Force with overwhelming firepower, as we saw in Absolute Resolve and Epic Fury. A year ago, I testified in my confirmation hearing that I would create the most lethal Navy and Marine Corps team the world has ever seen. I will keep that promise, having worn the cloth of our nation for 32 years, most of which was in combat. I do this also because I will not allow my oldest son, who will be commissioned a week from tomorrow as a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps, to go to war the way I did, without the equipment that we needed. I will not allow this for any of America's sons or daughters. They signed a blank check to this nation up to and including their lives, and we owe it to them to do our due diligence to fund this historic budget that will care for them and their families while giving them the tools to answer the call. I've seen firsthand what communism and authoritarian regimes have done to thriving nations. Members of my family were murdered by communists. In 1975, we had no place to go. We had no flag to stand under or a country to call our own. But this place called the United States gave us hope and a home and a future. I've dedicated my entire adult life to defend this nation under God so that this would never happen to my children, your children, or our grandchildren. Thank you again for this opportunity to testify before you. Before I end, though, this is Admiral Benguez, my Chief of Legislative Affairs, last hearing before you. And I wanted to thank him for his service. And thank you for your time, Chairman. Again, I know your time is very important. If you want to cut this down to less than 5 hours, I think we're ready to support you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm proud that you have a very strong voice, and I apologize that we're having audio problems with your microphone. We're working on that. Admiral Caudill, you're recognized.
Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Smith, and distinguished members of the committee, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to testify on the posture of the United States Navy. I'm honored to be joined by Acting Secretary of the Navy, Cal, and my good friend, General Eric Smith. We appreciate the committee's steadfast support for our sailors, our Marines, our civilian workforce, and their families as well, for the resources you provide to defend our nation. This past year, our Navy celebrated 250 years of American sea power. Today, our founding fathers would scarcely recognize the modern fleet, ballistic missile submarines deterring strategic attack, nuclear-powered aircraft carriers projecting power across the globe, and an all-domain naval force delivering precision lethality at scale. And while the platforms have changed, one truth has not. The sailor remains our most and greatest competitive advantage and the heartbeat of our fleet. This July, on our nation's 250th birthday, our sailors will carry that legacy forward wherever our nation requires presence, power, and resolve. Since assuming the duties of the Chief of Naval Operations, I have been focused on one central objective: ensuring the Navy never loses its differentiated value. In February, we released the United States Navy Fighting Instructions, which is designed to operationalize my priorities of foundry, fleet, and the way we fight, and provide clear guidance on how we will build, generate, and employ Navy combat power for the conflicts we must be prepared to win. These instructions reflect a simple reality. The Navy's value lies in our ability to generate decisive combat power from the sea with tailorable formations, sustain them forward, and deliver lethal effects across every domain at the time and place of our choosing globally. Operation Epic Fury is providing in real time what the Navy delivers: forward, persistent combat power from the sea, sovereign options, independent of basing, survivable and resilient under pressure, and able to strike decisively. That is our differentiated value on full display. To preserve that advantage, we are executing a hedge strategy to ensure the fleet will build today, it's ready for the fight we face now, and adaptable and scalable to the one we will face tomorrow. That strategy is realized through the Golden Fleet Initiative, a fleet design that blends high and lower-end combatants, integrates robotic and autonomous systems, and enables scalable formations to outpace emerging threats. This approach increases our ability to scale combat mass, distribute risk, and maintain escalation dominance against the operational challenges our combatant commanders face globally. It also requires integrating technologies like artificial intelligence, advanced manufacturing, directed energy, and containerized systems as operational capabilities that expand our reach, persistence, and lethality across our kill chains and kill webs. Our FY27 budget request is strategy-driven. It's aligned to the Department of the Navy's priorities and the objectives of the National Defense Strategy, leveraging the concepts outlined in the United States Navy Fighting Instructions to ensure our investments directly strengthen the foundry, the fleet, and the way we fight. It reflects disciplined choices to ensure we first always field a credible and highly effective sea-based strategic deterrent. And second, we invest in the right capabilities that preserve our warfighting advantage. To do that, we focus on 4 priorities. First, sailors first. Quality of service is not a luxury. It underwrites combat readiness and must always be our first priority. Second, the foundry. The foundry is where combat power is forged, and we must not use it as a bill payer. A hollow foundry results in a hollow Navy. Third, the fleet. Our fleet is the most decisive and flexible military instrument of national power. Therefore, we must field the right mix of forces to realize the Golden Fleet's full potential through a smart application of the HEAD strategy. And fourth, the fight. Winning will depend on the strength and adaptability of our kill chains and kill webs. From robust counter-targeting to leveraging new stealth technologies to an abundance of longer-range munitions to enhanced mission command. We must integrate and synchronize our capabilities seamlessly with our joint force teammates, our partners, and our allies. It is truly the honor of my life to serve as your Chief of Naval Operations. With your continued partnership, we will ensure the United States Navy remains the most capable, most ready, and most lethal maritime force in the world, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral. General Smith, you're recognized.
Well, good morning, Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Smith, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to appear before you today alongside Acting Secretary Cow and Admiral Caudill to represent your Marine Corps. I'd like to start by recognizing the significance of this year's President's budget. It is a generational investment that supports the Marine Corps' top 4 focus areas. 1, restoring a 3.0 amphibious ready group Marine Expeditionary Unit presence. 1 RMU off the East Coast, 1 off the West Coast, and a 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit episodically deployed out of Okinawa, Japan. 2, setting the theater. 3, accelerating modernization and lethality. And 4, building and sustaining a lethal force. Restoring a 3.0 amphibious ready group Marine Expeditionary Unit presence is the Marine Corps' North Star. It consists of 3 continuously forward deployed amphibious ready group Marine Expeditionary Unit teams. Again, 1 sourced from the East Coast, 1 from the West Coast, and 1 episodically deployed out of Okinawa, Japan. Each embarked on 3 amphibious warships, 1 big deck and 2 small boys. The Amphibious Ready Group, or ARG, with the Marine Expeditionary Unit is the most agile, versatile, and responsive formation of the Joint Force, hands down. It is how our nation's leaders sustain forward posture, deter aggression, and respond to crisis or conflict across the entire globe. Today, we have 3.0 Amphibious Ready Group Marine Expeditionary Unit presence. It is a strategic value, and that strategic value is clear. The 22nd MU is combating narco-terrorism in the Caribbean, while the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit and the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit are providing operational flexibility to maintain security and stability in the Middle East and the Indo-Pacific. But this is not something we can sustain. We need to enhance our amphibious warship readiness and increase the size of our amphibious force. I want to extend my sincere appreciation to the Secretary of War, the Acting Secretary of the Navy, and my shipmate Daryl Caudill for their unwavering support towards our shared goal of restoring a 3.0 Amphibious Ready Group Marine Expeditionary Unit presence. Our second focus area is setting the theater. We're committed to protecting our interests, deterring adversaries, reassuring allies, and creating a more agile and resilient global sustainment network, one that seamlessly integrates with the joint force. To achieve this, we're ensuring an optimized force posture while also investing in littoral mobility, pre-positioned equipment and supplies, digital manufacturing, and enhanced installation resilience. We're refining our approach to logistics, prioritizing resilience, speed, and adaptability to generate and sustain our forces. Our third area of focus is accelerating modernization and lethality. Force design underpins everything that we do. We remain committed to modernizing everything from our Marine Expeditionary Units to our Marine Expeditionary Forces, focusing on precision fires, air defense, unmanned systems, resilient command and control, and electromagnetic warfare. We're gaining momentum, but we have to accelerate to ensure that our Marines are most lethal, survivable, and resilient the day before a conflict starts. And finally, we're building and sustaining a lethal force. The quality of life of Marines and their families directly impacts readiness, retention, and lethality. We are deliberately investing in Marines and their families to improve living conditions, institutionalize Marine Corps total fitness, and ensure support for family resources. Before I close, I want to take a moment to recognize the members of this committee and other committees with jurisdiction over the national defense who will be retiring. On behalf of all Marines, thank you for your service to this nation. We know it comes at great personal cost. Thank you for your leadership, but most of all for your partnership. Your constant and steadfast support has ensured the readiness of your Marine Corps. We wish you the best in the next chapter of your service, as we say fair winds and following seas. I'd like to close by stating that your Marines are ready. The Marine Corps is a globally responsive, lethal, combined arms naval expeditionary force that is capable of projecting power from sea to land and from land to sea, and to maneuver across multiple domains in contested environments to deter, deny, and defeat our adversaries. Thank you again for your trust and support, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General. I'll recognize myself for questions first. We all know that a continuous, strong demand signal is critical to getting our shipbuilding industrial base back on a healthy footing. Ms. Secretary, can you tell us how you're ensuring that fleet requirements and fleet and the acceleration of production rates is happening in the shipbuilding industry?
Mr. Chairman, we have many levers we're pulling. Obviously, the SIOP program allows us to invest into our industrial base. We have, for example, for submarine building, a very talented officer, Vice Admiral Rob Goucher, who I've known for 36 years, who is leading and basically moving the submarine construction to the left. But again, we need to explore every single avenue of ship construction in this country. It's not just about warships. Right now, there's only 188 flagged U.S. merchant ships and 105 military sea lift commands ships, whereas the Chinese have 11,000 ships. We are a maritime nation bordering both the Pacific and the Atlantic, and we depend on that maritime dominance for our trade and for the good of our nation as well. And so if we pull all the levers, we're looking at 540,000 jobs in the United States for shipbuilding alone, and that's for every single one of your districts. And this is why we need to fund this bill, sir, so we can get shipbuilding going and get this nation going.
Admiral Caudle, what operational impacts will you feel if Congress doesn't pass supplemental funding, and when do you think you'll start feeling those impacts?
Sir, as you know, the FY26 budget didn't bake in Epic Fury. And we're, the Navy, if you see any news channel and you look at the graphic there, you see a large Navy force in the Middle East. So we're burning bright, and that's what Navies do. And we're built that way. But it does come at costs, and it comes at operational costs. Things like fuel costs, operating hours, training airframes, and all the sorts of incremental things, munitions that you actually expend during wartime. And so without supplemental funding, I do fear that I'll have to start making decisions in the July timeframe on how I do force generation. That could make differences between how I do exercises, how I do routine operations, in order to make sure that I do not, have the funds necessary to continue the war effort for Epic Fury. A bigger piece, too, that I would tell you is in people. I'm incurring additional costs in the manpower accounts as well. And so without additional funding, I'm going to end up having to hold on station a number between 12 and 15,000 new accessions that I'm trying to push through. So my record recruiting is going to be thwarted without additional funding to PCS those individuals from boot camp and to pay enlistment and re-enlistment bonuses. So those efforts could be challenged if I don't get additional supplemental funding, sir.
On another point, Admiral, what steps have you taken fleet-wide to improve your maintenance outcomes and improve your readiness rates?
Well, I think the Secretary landed most of it. You know, this has been a full-court press effort to expand our maritime industrial base and certainly the submarine industrial base. I think the acquisition reform is putting, with the DERPM and other PAE structural changes, to put more accountability at our supervisors of shipbuildings to be more intrusive oversight while construction's going on. The idea of developing, no kidding, getting the U.S. to no kidding build ships through a modular, distributed type of framework. We're doing that to some extent with Virginia-class and Arleigh Burke, but we need to expand that. We need better integration of artificial intelligence. We need better integration of robotics to do more welds robotically for higher output and reproducing higher quality. We've got workforce talent management going on across the country, but we need more of that as well to make sure we recruit and retain and lower the attrition of our key workforce. And that's not just, you know, kind of wage grade and vocational. This is middle-level engineer management. It's coming out of engineering STEM schools that I desperately need for doing the planning and oversight of the work. And then I'd say that's I'd say most of the things we got going on, sir.
Great. With that, I'll yield to the ranking member.
Thank you very much. Building off the theme of the opening statement in terms of, you know, how can we get to more cost-effective solutions, I've been very impressed by the fact that when it comes to like shooting down drones, we've invented some new systems. We were shooting them down with $2-3 million missiles. L3 Harris has come up with the Vampire system that's $30,000 a shot, very effective. Another private company came up with Mirops. By the way, I think Vampire is a much better name than Mirops if you're going to name a system, just for those paying attention to those things. $15,000 a shot. And it was all about figuring out, okay, we have our needs. How do we meet them in a very cost-effective way? What is the equivalent in the Navy and Marine Corps in terms of how you're thinking about meeting your needs in a more cost-effective way? And that's one of the many things that troubles me, again, about the battleship. We look at new technology, new ways to deal things, all these demands, asymmetric advantages, and we come up with, say, you know what, we're going to go with a massive $22 billion solution. That seems to be the exact opposite of taking advantage of modern technology to meet your needs in a more cost-effective way. So how are you all thinking about options equivalent to, instead of $2 million, we're going to do $30,000 and achieve the same objective, and using new technology to get there?
Ranking Member, you're absolutely right, sir. I mean, when we're launching an SM-2 missile that costs $2.25 million per shot to take down a $1,000 drone, it's ridiculous. And that's why electronic warfare is so important. I mean, we need to cover everything from 30 megahertz to 8 gigahertz with no band breaks in between, but also we need static radar to look at it, but also gimbals, because a lot of their cross-section, the radar cross-sections of these drones look very similar to our aircrafts as well. So there's many options out there, and you mentioned like a large ship. Well, there's, as far as I was in the Navy, even all the way back to 2011 when I worked in OPNAV N96, the Surface Warfare Division, we had a requirement for a large combatant. It's called CGX at the time. Because
we've got a lot of requirements, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Secretary. One of the things that I would suggest that we're going to need to do is get out of the requirements-based approach. I mean, so much that goes on at the Pentagon, and I think the chairman agreed, is we all sit around and come up with requirements, okay? And there's, gosh, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pages of them. Let's focus on what actually needs to be done instead of, well, we got a requirement for it. We got to think through it a little bit more than that. Sorry to interrupt. Just had to make that point. Go ahead.
Thank you for that. Ranking Member, I pay bills at home, and there's, you know, the kids need braces, they need everything, and we have to balance all those things. But again, with the battleship, the problem is that your DDGs are so decked out right now. The Pinckney, USS Pinckney, is the only ship in our fleet that has a Slick 32 Victor 7 for electronic warfare. And I mean, I told you yesterday, I mean, it looks like a big chipmunk with a mouthful of nuts right now because it's so overburdened, and that's why we need a large combatant that has all electronic warfare as well as 200 VLS cells, including conventional prompt strike. Imagine a missile that can go from here to the West Coast in 16 minutes that the enemy can't stop, and this is what's going to deter the enemy. Meanwhile, we need to also invest into our shipyards. We need to invest into our electronic warfare, and as well as our sailors and Marines as well. And this is why the job of balancing the budget is so difficult, and And
Sure.
again, I want to I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, one other question on that. There are a lot of different companies now making autonomous ships. They're really, and yes, the autonomous aspect is important, but they're also looking at new ways to do shipbuilding in general. How can we do it more rapidly, more cost effectively? They seem to have made a lot of progress. What are the principal lessons that have been learned from that, that regardless of what we're building, whether it's a battleship, an aircraft carrier, or something smaller, that we could do it more quickly and more cost effectively? Both Admiral and Mr. Secretary, if you can.
Well, again, I'll turn to Admiral Cottrell in a second, but it's just about using AI so we can streamline our processes as well as additive manufacturing. But Admiral Cottrell?
You know, sir, I would say when we were upside down, as the Secretary is talking about on kills, cost per kill with SM2, SM6, we fielded and rallied very quickly during Red Sea operations, Rough Rider, to actually get on board our strike groups, Roadrunner, Coyote, and Hellfire, instantiations of that, to really turn that very quickly. That took collaboration from our Surface Warfare and Mine Development Center, from SurfLant, from Dahlgren, and of course NavWar, to get those TTPs, bake that in, get it certified, and every strike group has deployed with that. It's much more effective, and that learning happened very quickly. Directed energy, of course, is part of that in electronic warfare. Some of the things that, in the...
I'm out of time. I apologize for that. But I don't want to take too much time. But those are exactly the types of answers that I think we need more of. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Turner is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I am the co-chair of your. I am the co-chair of the Congressional Military Sexual Assault Prevention Caucus. Several of us have received information of a change in the Navy policy concerning how investigations of reports of sexual harassment are handled. I'm going to submit to you a letter requesting written answers to concerns about those changes. I ask unanimous consent to submit this for the record, and then thank you, and then ask for your written responses to those. Mr. Secretary, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is in my district, and it is home to the 711th Human Performance Wing. It is also home to the Naval Medical Research Unit, Dayton. It is the site where those two come together as a joint center of excellence for aerospace medical research that was established in 2005. It's a place where the Air Force and the Navy are supposed to come together, conducting aerospace medicine research for the purposes of advancing human performance in aerospace. Unfortunately, the Naval Medical Research Unit in Dayton has been neglected. In 2022, a study for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers identified that this medical unit was in desperate need of just basic maintenance, and it continues to struggle for funding in basic infrastructure improvements. As a result of that, I put a request in last year's NDAA for the Navy to respond to how is the Navy going to respond to this report from 2022 that has yet to be answered. That report in the NDAA had a deadline of this year of March 31st, which was missed this year. So the Navy hasn't even responded to the request to respond to the lack of responding to the Army Corps of Engineers response, which was 2022. We're missing the opportunity for the Navy and the Air Force to work together in aerospace medicine research, which again is supposed to advance human performance in aerospace. Mr. Secretary, I'd ask you, are you aware of this missed opportunity, and can we remedy this opportunity so that we can advance, obviously, this incredible opportunity to advance human performance in aerospace?
Congressman, I apologize. I was not aware of this, but this is the problem when we have a lot of these units attached to Air Force bases. I had the problem in Tinker Air Force Base too, where we had a large number of suicides, and that I've gone there personally, and I've made a lot of headway in order to curtail the suicide rates at Tinker Air Force Base. But for Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, human performance is so important. We have to treat every sailor and Marine like a weapon systems. We need to take care of them. That's whether it's through human performance or medical treatment or even mental health. We will do that. So you have my word that I will not only look at into this, respond quickly, but also come visit you, sir. And in response to the sexual assault and sexual harassment, we are going to investigate every single issue with licensed or trained investigators, and we will respond to that request as well. And again, I have 5 children, 3 daughters. I will not allow this to happen.
I look forward to your response to both. Thank you.
Gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, you and Ranking Member Smith, as well as the Secretary, spoke to the issue of the commercial fleet that America does not have. Draw to your attention, there is a piece of legislation called the Ships Act that deals directly with that. I bring that to the attention of the committee, and perhaps that could be an integral part of our work as we form up the NDAA. Rather important in meeting all of the requirements that we have. So I'll let it go at that. Thank you for bringing the issue up, and I'll drive it forward. I have 2 questions here. Admiral Cottle, the west coast of the United States, I believe, borders on the Pacific. The Pacific is going to be, has been, and will continue to be a major theater with enormous challenges. Do we have sufficient facilities on the west coast of the United States to meet the needs of the Navy as it looks to its larger fleet and to the challenges of the Pacific?
Congressman, we do not have sufficient facilities in general, and I would argue that we do not have sufficient on the West Coast. As our theater of importance and our priority of how we've split the Navy, our 60-40 split predicates that to prevent transits through the Panama Canal or other ways we would get around to the East Coast, the more options I have as the CNO to repair our ships without those transits to East Coast public yards, the way I can, have to share those yards and keep them level loaded, improves quality of life for people if they can stay on the coast and not such large PCS moves, and just improves combat and damage control that I can do when I actually need to repair in that capacity. So we are tasked in this budget to go look hard at a 5th shipyard, and that study is, we will take a lot of time and understand that very clearly where to lay down that capacity. But I would, answer your question bluntly, no, I do not have sufficient capacity.
I look forward to working with you on developing opportunities on the West Coast for the need of the Navy for its ship repair and perhaps also for the development of additional fleet. I want to go to General Smith. You spoke in your opening testimony about the amphibious ready groups and the MEUs. What do you need to carry out your plan? Do you have sufficient ships, amphibs, large and not so large? And what is the plan to develop? What is your plan and what is your need to develop the necessary fleet for the Marine Corps?
Well, sir, thanks for that question. So our requirement is a 3.0 ARGMU. Again, 1 off the East Coast, 1 off the West Coast, and 1 episodically deployed out of Okinawa, Japan. We're currently required to have a minimum of 31 amphibious warfare ships, but that was predicated on 80% readiness. And we're well short of 80% readiness in the amphib fleet. We're closer to 50%. So we're going to need more ships. I defer to my shipmate, Daryl Cottle, on exactly how many ships are going to be required to maintain that 3.0 ARGMU presence. But my requirement is a 3.0 ARGMU presence regardless of the number of ships that are available.
So those would be the large amphibs and the medium?
Yes, sir. LHAs, LHDs, and then LPDs.
Are they presently in the planning that the Navy is putting forth?
Again, I will defer to the Secretary and to the CNO on that, sir.
Let's move to the Secretary.
Yes, well, sir, I just can tell you we have an LHA and LPD and LSMs in the budget.
So all 3 of those ships are in the budget of sufficient
Yes,
number to meet the needs of the Marine Corps?
Yes, Congress.
Very good. With that, I will yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Whitman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank our witnesses for joining us today. Secretary Cal, Admiral Cottle, General Smith, thanks so much for the incredible job that you do. Secretary Cal, I want to start with you. Yesterday at the House Subcommittee on Appropriations for Defense, you talked about nuclear power generation, specifically onshore nuclear power generation. We all know our nuclear navy is the best ever in the history of humankind, and how it utilizes nuclear energy to power our ships. That's 70 years of record with naval reactors is beyond reproach. What I want to look at is how are we taking that technology and then applying it in different ways. And I got language in last year's National Defense Authorization Act that directed pilot projects on Navy bases to actually do onshore nuclear power generation with small modular reactors, and to do that in a way where we can pair that with data centers. Listen, the future of what we need to make sure we win the race in AI is going to center around data. You want to have your power generation sources close to where your data centers are, the power demand. There's a need for the military for that power generation to have organic capabilities on a base to make sure we're not at peril with the larger grid if somebody tries to take it out, and then making sure we have our own organic capability with the data that we need for that. All those things make sense. They're also in line with what's happening externally with other efforts to generate more power to respond to this nation's increased energy needs, and making sure that we're doing data center development in a very responsible way. And I argue the nation and the Navy and the military benefits from that. Give me your perspective on how you think we can aggressively pursue this to, as quickly as we can, get these SMRs permitted and under construction on Navy bases, how we can look for partners in the data center realm to put those on military bases or on Navy bases, and how you would look at executing that.
Thank you, Congressman. This summer, Norfolk Naval Base is going to be powered from an aircraft carrier. We're going to export the energy from the aircraft carrier to the base. But imagine having this power generation from within the base, that we can even export the energy to the surrounding area and use that as a working capital fund to now actually fix our bases. And the energy that's produced from these, we can power also, or use it for a 4-stage distiller, making water, fresh potable water. I mean, on a carrier, we're pumping millions of gallons over the side every day of fresh potable water that tests at pH 7, right? That we can now export in places like California, where you have a drought. You can actually export that energy, that water, to put in the surrounding area. Now, the president has named the Army, which breaks my heart, as the executive agent for shore-based thing. This is, as a matter of honor, we are the nuclear Navy. So I do want to turn over to Admiral Cottle, who is more in tune of nuclear power than I can ever be.
Congressman, one thing we need is a champion. Okay, you're doing that over here, but we've got to have an overall programmatic champion for the SMR program. So I think we're dithering a bit there and not really kind of landing on the pilot and laying out the program of record.
Yes.
So while the Army may be tapped to be the overall lead for it, I see no world in which the Navy's not going to be part of that discussion and bring our expertise through our long-established naval reactors, deep understanding of reactor physics and understanding safe operation. But we need to get a pilot established and a target date and get one going.
Admiral Cottle, thank you. And we will be laser focused on that again this year, the National Defense Authorization Act. I wanted to follow on with that on a shipbuilding issue. There's $1.85 billion in this year's president's budget in the request for advanced shipbuilding industrial base and future ship experimental, essentially looking at the proposal of taking foreign designs and then putting those in place for our shipbuilding. I just have a question about that. I have a hesitation about that because we tried that with FREM, with an Italian design, and we took an Italian design and we said, okay, it's 85% complete, and then made adjustments to it, and all of a sudden it only became 15% complete on design. And today we have 2 Constellation-class ships, and that will be it. We will cancel the rest of the program. So I guess my question is how do you see this going forward, and how are we going to reconcile the effort to say, let's grow the industrial base, let's grow shipbuilding in the United States, and on the other hand, say that we're going to now look at foreign ship designs and how we're going to build and sustain a U.S. shipbuilding industrial base for our U.S. Navy?
Well, you know, there are a lot of lessons we learn from Constellation. This can be done right. I think the Icebreaker program is an example of where, you know, this can be.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Norcross.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank the witnesses for being here today. We're focusing on our shipbuilding capacity for good reason. It's not working. It's getting better. Back when Pearl Harbor happened in 1941, our shipbuilding capacity was in shambles. Within 2 years, President Roosevelt brought those leaders of the great industrial companies in this America, and within 2 years, we're pumping out 1 ship a week plus. We got behind it. We know we got into this problem by disinvesting in our own industrial base. That's why back in 21, we put a Buy American Act to step up the percentage of American-made products in our shipbuilding. Back in 24, the Mines Act expanded on that to say you're going from 65 to 75 and eventually 85%. Well, we put that in. It's law. We have not received one report from the repository we created to say how much of our industrial base starts and is made here in the United States. We're repeating the problems that got us into it. Yet, this year's shipbuilding plan states that strategy for growing the industrial base, the expansion of the industrial base through direct foreign investment, that the plan's contents, the table of contents, an entire section dedicated to foreign investment and support. This is contrary to those last 2 pieces we put in the NDA. And time after time, people in your position says we have to build our industrial base, yet we haven't. Goes on at the same time, the acting Secretary of the Navy, the entire plan was about restoring maritime industrial strength. Secretary, you stated it 5 minutes ago. So here we are. We know the plan that we need to do is to invest in ourselves like we've done once before. Yet the shipbuilding plan goes the exact opposite direction and says, how do we get foreign investment? This is what got us here. Do you need a little boost in the beginning? Potentially. We're not saying that's not the way to do it. But the idea of foreign investment got us into this problem, the offshoring of our industrial base. So, Mr. Secretary, how do you square these circles?
Congressman, thank you for that question. We're not investing in foreign shipbuilding. What we're doing is seeing what these models work, whether they will work in our fleet, and then they will bring that to the United States. Some of these foreign shipbuilders are cranking out destroyers at a rate of 1 every 2 years, whereas it's taking 6 to 8 years.
Please, just give me a moment.
Yes,
Page 17 of that plan, potentially from overseas shipyards, along with the fuel tankers, and that acknowledgement, this work may be performed from the outside of the United States. So if what you're saying is true, you have to change that, saying we're not going to get these made outside of the United States.
Again, we're also bringing our workers over there to learn their techniques, sir, because we're just not doing it fast enough over here. It's one of those things where, you know, they use a lot of AI to map out their workload every day so that we're not wasting time on just paperwork. 40% of our time at our shipyards are spent doing just paperwork on literally a clipboard and an Excel spreadsheet instead of doing it.
So invest in the United States so we don't do this. The idea that you've opened up the door here, contrary to what we've been saying, for foreign investment on their side of the water, completely different than what we talked about in this committee, what you talked about. I have no problem sending people over to learn it better. No problem. But the idea that somehow it's because we didn't learn how to do it better. No, we didn't make the investment. So please, I want to hear from Admiral and from you that you're not going to build these ships overseas. You're going to build it here in the United States where our industrial base needs to grow.
We have to push every lever, Congressman, to make this work. I mean, it's like honestly, it's like going to a candy machine. Your Snickers bars get stuck. You know, you can do 2 things. You can call that number, 800 number, and no one's going to respond. You're not going to get your money back. You can put more money in, but that's not going to work. You can shake the machine. It's just not going to get, or you can go, you know, next door to the other candy machine and get it. That's what we're trying to do, sir. We're trying to make sure that we are invigorating the industrial base and energizing them
I
and
have 9
causing
seconds.
competition.
Thank you. I appreciate your speaking directly to this, but the fact of the matter is we're not investing here in America to the point that we need. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Dr. Desjardins.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank our witnesses for being here today. Mr. Whitman started the subject, and Mr. Norcross continued it. I had a question for Secretary Cow. In your opening statement, you mentioned how the department has been focusing on expanded distributed shipbuilding efforts. Can you expand what those efforts will look like in a practical sense and how foreign shipbuilding efforts will impact domestic shipyard production? And just as an aside, yesterday I met with South Korean Ambassador Kang in my office, who was offering shipbuilding capabilities in South Korea, and what other allies of ours around the world can help us fill the gap while we're trying to rebuild Americans' shipbuilding capacity.
Thank you, Congressman. We're trying to, like I said, energize our industrial base here. I think some of our primes have gotten very comfortable with the way they're doing things, cranking out ships at 6 to 8 years. I mean, we're better than this. We're Americans. We can do a lot better than this. And sometimes it just takes a little competition to get us going. And this is where we're bringing in foreign shipbuilders to say, you know what, let's bring our American workers over there, see how they build things, and bring it back over and industrialize our capacity. Along with that, we are looking in a few weeks. I'm hoping we will be able to announce to you guys some of the things we're going to build in America. That's it's being worked on right now as we speak by the Deputy Secretary of War. And so I love to come in basically 24 hours before we announce these things to inform you how we're going to do that. But let me turn over to Admiral Cottle and so he can talk about the SIAP program that his officers are working on.
Well, I've been tackling this for the last 6 years, from Subforce Commander to the Fleet Forces Commander to CNO. And to some extent, the Secretary's got it right. It's been pushing a rope on getting the improvements we need to see. I live in a real threat-based world. And threat-based analysis means I actually have to have, no kidding, ships. And while I love everything to be built in the United States, we do have to expand the aperture. This budget, to be executed, will have to expand the industrial base and actually go in a smart way, in an optimized way, lay down that ship demand signal across the different yards that can actually go produce this in an effective way. In my worldview, that will actually require some foreign shipyards to actually help me do that, to actually deliver the actual ships I need in a time frame when that's important. And so I think it's an all hands on deck, and to execute this budget at the size and scale, it's going to take that approach.
Okay. And Admiral Cottle, staying with you, let's go underwater. The Navy had a plan to potentially extend the service lives of several Ohio-class submarines known as PIRA to ensure sea-based deterrence requirements continue to be met during the transition from Ohio to Columbia. My understanding is this plan continues to evolve, and the Navy is now looking at smaller life extensions for greater numbers of Ohio-class submarines. Can you update us on the current approach and the importance of ensuring at-sea deterrence requirements continue to be met as we transition from the Ohio to the Columbia?
Sir, there will be no chinks in the armor of delivering a credible, safe, and effective sea-based deterrent. It underwrites every single thing we do, from continuity of government to continuity of decision-making to continuity of operations. We will actually field that in accordance with U.S. Strategic Command requirements. So to make sure that happens, I am making sure that as Columbia comes online, that I have what I would call a make before break transition between Columbia as we sunset the Ohio class, which has served so well. To do that, we will extend some Ohio class to give us the breathing room necessary for that transition. And so that's our plan of record for that. The total number of that is still being refined, but you can look at a number between 4 and 5 Ohio class to actually make that transition effective. And we will extend them through the PIRA availabilities as you have described.
Okay, thank you. And Secretary Cow, we've only got 47 seconds, but we know we've had some setbacks in both the conventional prompt strike programs, the Army's land-based long-range hypersonic weapons, And due to the previous test failures involving Army launchers and all up round, both CPS and LRHW have undergone a replan. Can you speak to the progress of the replan and how Congress can work to support the advancement of the hypersonic mission in 20 seconds?
Congressman, I worked on moving the conventional prompt strike from AT&L, OSD to AT&L to Navy in 2016, and we were supposed to deliver it, and we're running out of time, so we are accelerating as fast as possible. But Slick Amend is also another deterrent that will really be a game changer, sir.
Thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back, Chair, and I recognize Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Admiral Caudill, a few weeks ago, Indo-PACOM Commander Admiral Paparo testified that the AUKUS security agreement is essential and that Pillar 1 of the AUKUS optimal pathway, quote, is on track in every regard. As you know, Congress has made direct investment in the submarine industrial base, $10 billion since starting in 2018, and we're seeing some positive results. In 2025 in New England, there was a 13% increase in submarine tonnage. We had the commissioning of the 25th and 26th Virginia-class submarine just a few weeks ago. The acting secretary was there for the Idaho, the number 26th. And the 27th and the 28th are pressure hull complete, and they're in the process of going through sea trials, knock on wood, delivery and commissioning sometime within the next 12 months or so. So my question to you is, do you agree with the findings of the AUKUS review last December that endorsed continuing our commitment to that security agreement, as well as Admiral Paparo's testimony?
Congressman Courtney, I wholeheartedly agree with it. I was part of it. I was in bed creating it. I made a lot of the recommendations in it that were actually adopted and fully support AUKUS Pillar 1, fully support Sam Paparo's statement, and look forward to standing up Submarine Squadron 3 later this year and making sure that Submarine Rotational Force West becomes alive and getting the first Virginia-class transfer to Australia next year as we continue to build out where they eventually buy U.S. submarines. So fully support, sir.
Thank you. Another aspect of this is having surge readiness in place. And I know when Admiral Houston took over at Naval Reactors, it was hovering around 60%. In terms of submarine availability. It's sort of gone up a little bit down a little. And but can you talk about, again, how something that doesn't get talked about a lot, but if you're really talking about making sure that our undersea fleet is going to be in a position to complete the commitments that AUKUS calls for, but also make sure that all our combatant commanders like Admiral Paparo, have the access to the undersea fleet at the same time?
Well, this is really about, posture. Where do we put our submarines and home port them in a way that we can sustain them and operate them? That's why Guam is so important, the Submarine Squadron 15 there. That's why, Hawaii and of course, San Diego become very important. And then what we've done is, and I think in a very thoughtful way, is for once in a lifetime shared technology with a close partner, Australia, to give them a no-kidding submarine force that will add an entirely new dimension to the threats we face in the Indo-Pacific. And so that under the submarine squadron and the way we will command and control that, working with the Australian Navy, who are great partners and have been for decades, will give Admiral Paparo access to those submarines as well.
Thank you. So, and General Smith, along the same lines, making sure that the amphibious ship industrial base, both in terms of production and repair and maintenance, that's pretty key to making sure that we have the MU levels that you have, again, testified over the years about. Can you sort of give us sort of your perspective about where that those efforts, that enterprise stands?
Sir, I can. What I base it on is a 3.0 ARGMU presence. The 31 amphibious warfare ships that are required by law are based on 80% readiness. And again, we're well below 80% readiness. So my requirement is a 3.0 ARGMU presence, and I'm agnostic as to how we improve the amphibious readiness. There's multiple ways you can do it. You can do optimized maintenance and force generation. You can do targeted service life extensions, and you can do new ship procurement or a combination of the three. And so I defer to my shipmate, Daryl Caudill, on how to meet that requirement. But both services agree that 31 ships is simply not enough for a 3.0 ARGMU presence. Achieving this requires increased investment. And again, PB27 is a significant down payment on this.
Great, thank you. So I've only got a little bit of time left. Next week, the Sea Power Subcommittee is going to be holding its own sort of posture budget perspective. There will be many questions about the battleship program. We're going from basically a poster board in December to $1 billion requested this year, $17 billion the following year. The one lesson certainly in my time here is that before you start cutting steel, you got to make sure your design piece is done or pretty darn close to done. We have, whether Zumwalt or LCS, I mean, the stories still haunt, I think, a lot of us here about the fact when that, discipline is not sort of adhered to. But again, I'm running out of time, but I at least flag that for you and your team that, we've got lots of issues and questions we want to explore on that. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Mississippi, General Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by just saying that we need every shipyard in America at full capacity. We need every dry dock repairing some ship that we have somewhere. That is critical. I just visited the Philly shipyard this last weekend. They can be complementary. We need to make sure all these shipyards at full capacity, that they have a steady demand signal, and that we continue to produce warships, but not only warships, but logistical ships that support both our time mariners and our Navy. And so whatever it does, some of those skills interlike. So I want to begin by thanking President Trump for his leadership in restoring our military, including historic investments in our shipbuilding and strengthening the defense industrial base. The budget builds on that progress and reinforces the national defense remains a top priority. Secretary Cowell, congratulations on your appointment. And thank you for releasing a 30-year shipbuilding plan. I have been on this committee for 9 years, and I have been asking for 9 years for a 30-year shipbuilding plan, and we finally have one. While I may not agree with the contents of every one of it or exactly how it goes, at least we have a basis to now determine what type of ships to build. Secretary Cowell, what can this committee be doing to help incentivize a quicker amphib production rate?
Thank you, Congressman, for that, for your comments, and as well as, getting out the shipbuilding plan was hard, but the way I see it, the Congress of the United States is like the Board of Trustees, and I need to answer your questions. And, it may not be perfect 30 years on because we had no idea what the world looked like 30 years ago. I mean, we didn't know anything about autonomous vehicles. We didn't know about that China was a threat. We didn't even know who Osama bin Laden was. So I want to concentrate definitely on the 5, 10, 15 years, and that includes the amphibious ships as well. And like you said, we need to pull every single lever there is in order to get shipbuilding going. And it may very well be something simple like, these young people that we lied to said, hey, you have to have a degree to make a living, and they're not working right now. What can we do to maybe even freeze their loans, right? And then when they work at a shipyard, we pay off every year. We pay off a year of that loan just so they can have the honor of working for a living as well as paying off their bills. But there's a lot of things we need to do, sir. But the main thing is we need this budget to be passed so that we can energize and invigorate shipbuilding, sir.
Okay. Admiral Cottle, I'm just going to make a comment because I really don't have time, but the Navy has to get better about not procrastinating on amphib readiness. We need to either build more amphibs and we need to keep those ships ready. And I know that we're improving, but we need to improve much faster because we need those. That's the Swiss knife of our Navy and ground forces and air power. And so those amphibs are so important for both hard and soft power around the globe. And so whatever it takes, we need to commit to getting 3.0 ARGMUs. With that, I want to talk just a little bit about the E-2Ds. And it continues to prove itself as one of the Navy's most important battle management and command and control platforms. Tell me, what do you think about the block buying? Is it the right numbers, and how important are these E-2Ds to the force?
Well, sir, thank you. Let me just say, just real quick, there is no daylight between this table on amphib readiness. We're all behind 3.0, and we're working. I look forward to talking to you about the improvements. On E2, you got it exactly right. That is the special sauce of the air wing. Obviously, it's recognized not only for its ability to support carrier strike group, but we dirt death them as well and support the joint force. And so it's a need for that joint capability is crucial. Block buy is essential for a lot of reasons. One, it gives a clear demand signal to the investors who build this and actually who are going to produce it. It allows me to actually factor in through a more structured way how we modernize. It's how we actually keep the line open in a more productive manner. So I'm behind the block buy methodology, and I think it's really important to do it in that factor.
Thank you. And General Smith, I don't want to leave you out, but the KC-130Js, it's really important that we keep the procurement strategy, that it's not delayed, and that capacity is so important to the Marine Corps' mission. Is that correct, General Smith?
Sir, KC-130 is if I had to pick a platform that I would keep and divest of all others, I'd pick the KC-130J.
And don't forget about my P-8s, okay? And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Moulton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Acting Secretary, thank you for your service to our country. You said that the Navy would have 5 unmanned naval vessels by 2027 and 63 by 2031. Now, I agree that unmanned systems are a huge part of the future of naval warfare, but what about the small autonomous sea drones that are actually doing the work in Ukraine? Because Ukraine is producing hundreds of sea drones a month. We're nowhere near that level. Now, I thought Secretary Hegseth was proud of leaning very far forward on drones and autonomous systems. It doesn't feel like that's your department's priority.
Actually, Congressman, that's far from the truth, sir. We are very invested in drones. In fact, we have the RAS PAE her whole job is to look at drones and.
Okay, so Ukraine's, you say you're very invested in drones. Ukraine's standard sea drones cost about $250,000 a piece, and using those, they've pretty much destroyed Russia's entire Black Sea fleet, I mean, billions of dollars in damages. Do you think that kind of capability might help us in the Strait of Hormuz today?
Absolutely, sir. And again, when I say the 5, we're talking large ones, and we are investing in a lot of the small ones, and I will turn that over to Admiral Cottle, who can tell you more about the requirements for small unmanned.
Well, I'm just wondering, I mean, you're requesting $17 billion for a single battleship hull that won't be delivered until 2036. Do you know how many 250,000 drones you could buy for that one Trump-class battleship?
Yes, sir, but those drones cannot carry the conventional prompt strike or have 200.
Okay, just to put this in perspective, it's 68,000 drones. I think 68,000 drones, when Ukraine is producing 50 to 100, actually, sorry, several hundred a month, might help us today in the Strait of Hormuz. I just does not feel like a good investment.
Again, sir, the drones can't get there by themselves. It's like the little turtle that sits on your fence post. You know, someone's got to put it.
You know, it's funny. The Ukrainians managed to get them there. They barely even have a navy. We have 55 times the coastline of Ukraine.
They're not.
So if they can figure it out, Mr. Secretary, I'd like to think America can figure it out too.
Yes,
now,
sir.
Mr. Acting Secretary, you told a powerful and very American story of how your family immigrated from Vietnam a few years after the war. I'm proud that our country supported you and your family. Do you think we should do the same for our Afghan allies who are being hunted down by the Taliban right now as we speak?
Sir, before I came to this job, actually right after the fall of Afghanistan, I mean, which broke my heart. I mean, watching mothers hand babies to Marines just reminded me of what happened in Vietnam.
I understand, and I was there too. I felt the same way, but I'm just asking, do you think we should give the same privileges and opportunities to our Afghan allies that our country gave to you and your family and your friends?
Sir, I mean, anybody who comes here legally should be given the opportunity to come here. And
well, I'll tell you what, you and I will disagree on a lot of things. You might even say we're political adversaries. But I'm very proud that President Ford, President Carter, President Reagan did not deport you or your family while you were working on becoming citizens. Now, Mr. Acting Secretary, you have publicly supported Secretary Hegseth's proposal to ban active duty military members from attending Harvard. Both your official bio and your bio for the Senate campaign proudly list your Harvard affiliation. As a Harvard fellow yourself, do you believe the education and credentials that you received compromised your ability to serve or lead effectively?
Sir, we are looking at the best education for our military members. I mean, that's why naval.
So did Harvard make you too woke? Did Harvard make you too woke to be the Secretary of the Navy?
No, sir, but Naval Postgraduate School.
So you don't
allowed
think,
me to have.
So you survived Harvard without becoming woke, but you don't trust your officers who get in there, who want to go there, who apply there, to be able to go there themselves and not be indoctrinated?
Congressman, we need to invest into where they would best fit for the Navy. Again, going to Naval Postgraduate School, I actually got a.
So you think it was a big mistake for you to go to Harvard? Because you talk about it a lot in your bio.
Actually, I had mentioned it once, sir. I mean, it's just that.
You think it was a mistake?
Sir, I would love my education at Naval Postgraduate School because it allowed me to learn.
Yeah, but I'm asking you about Harvard. If you can't answer the question,
sir, I mean,
don't take the job,
Harvard is
Mr.
a fine
Secretary.
school, sir.
Let me ask you another question. You're the final authority for naming U.S. Navy ships. Do you think President Clinton, who dodged the draft, never served in the military, and was impeached, should have CVN 82 named after him?
Sir, the convention for naming.
Yes or no, Mr. Secretary?
Sir, I mean that's.
Do you think the ship should be named after
it should be
President
named after
Clinton?
the President of the United States, sir.
So you support naming it after President Clinton?
I have to review all the naming conventions, sir. I've not reviewed.
Well, I hope that you do. Thank you,
Gentleman's
Mr. Chairman. I
time
yield back.
expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Dr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for convening the hearing. Secretary Cowell, Admiral Cottle, and General Smith, thank you for your service. Thank you for being here today. Secretary Cowell, really glad to see you sitting in that seat. As the PRC continues to modernize its fleet at a historic pace, the need for a ready and capable American naval force has never been greater. The Department of the Navy fiscal year 2027 budget request is a defining moment to reassert the United States as the world's greatest maritime power, to rebuild our industrial base, and deliver a larger, more capable Golden Fleet to our sailors and Marines. Under President Trump's leadership, this budget proposes a historic 46% increase in shipbuilding funding, representing the highest level of naval investment since 1962 and a clear transition to a permanent wartime footing. Simultaneously, it accelerates U.S. Marine Corps modernization by 4 years. We must deliver these generational investments, and we must do it without delay. The Marine Corps' ability to sustain a credible 3.0 amphibious ready group Marine Expeditionary Unit, ARGMU, presence is foundational to the nation's forward crisis response and deterrence posture, particularly as demand for Naval Expeditionary Force grows across theaters. However, General Smith, you have emphasized that simply hitting a ship count requirement is meaningless if those ships aren't operationally ready to sustain a persistent ARGMU presence. I know we've talked a little bit about this subject already, but while I fully support the investing in the procurement of new ships, are we also making sufficient investments in amphibious readiness, maintenance, and industrial-based capacity to sustain the Marine Corps 3.0 ARGMU requirement in the long term? And if not, what should we be doing here as members of Congress to make sure that that happens and that ball does not get dropped? General?
Well, sir, I'll defer to the CNO on the specifics of the amphibious warship maintenance project. But what I can tell you is they do require funding. They require the funding to get after the spare parts. They require the funding to get after the time that it takes to produce the maintenance in the yards. And so, again, I will defer to Admiral Cottle on the actual how that happens. But those ships have to go into and come out of maintenance on time. I was taught by my assistant MEF commander, a guy named Chris McPhillips, call sign McFly, that most of the maintenance we do is because of the maintenance we do on our aircraft anyway. You go in to open up a wing and you pop a couple of rivets, and the next thing you know, what was going to be a light on a wing, you've accelerated or you've extended. Pardon me, you've extended the time that an aircraft or a ship is in the yards. It has to go into, stick to the maintenance schedule, and come out of on time.
Sir, we're doing a whole host of things. One, we had to get better at planning. And so we've started what we call our signature availabilities, where instead of really starting the planning in earnest, the 120 days prior to the avail starting, it's starting a full contractual out 1 year now. That's important. 2 port engineers are overseeing that. Critical path has always been retarded a bit on diesel overhaul. We're pulling that out of the avail to actually repair diesels during a time that's more opportune for us instead of putting that into the critical path. Long lead time material for these designs, boilers, and some of this stuff is very old, and actually improving the long lead time material ordering. Planning improvements, and probably the most important thing we've done is put a 4-star oversight board. The Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps and the Vice Chief of Naval Operations runs a quarterly meeting. It puts heat and light on amphib maintenance. It briefs the Secretary out every quarter on this so to ensure we have eyes wide open understanding of any barriers that need to be knocked down.
Thank you, Admiral. I appreciate that. And I want to do as much as we possibly can. As the political winds change, which they often do up here, I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to finish this job that we started that's critical to the national security of this country. One more question for you, Admiral. The V-22 Osprey is produced at Bell Helicopter, as you may know, in Amarillo, Texas, where I live, remains indispensable for Marine Corps assault, Navy fleet logistics, and special warfare operations. As part of the One Big Beautiful Bill, I was proud to secure $160 million for the Navy's CMV-22 nacelle improvement program, and I'm encouraged to see the Marine Corps is now planning to fully implement these improvements as well, a priority that is clearly reflected in the FY27 request. Admiral, how is the nacelle improvement program delivering improved readiness and reliability for the V-22 fleet, especially given the findings of the recent NAVAIR review? As the Marine Corps moves toward full implementation with their MV-22 fleet, can you commit that the Navy will also continue to fund these improvements across the entire CMV-22 fleet in future years as soon as possible?
Yes, sir. I know we're short on time. You have my full commitment on that. Nothing's more important. It's part of our air wing. We're not going back. The CMV-22 is extremely important. You have my full commitment on it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize as a gentleman from California, Mr. Carbajal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for being here. General Smith, it's good to see you again. The Marines are the only service to have passed a clean audit. As a Marine myself, I'm very proud to say that. This is something we need for the entire Department of Defense and every service branch to accomplish. For decades, the DoD has failed to achieve this. Frankly, I think it's shameful and an insult to the American taxpayers. General Smith, what lessons did the Marines learn during your audit process that can be applied to the other services to help them also pass their long overdue, decades overdue audits?
Well, sir, thanks for calling out the Marines for passing 3 consecutive audits. We're very proud of that. Again, we're the only service to do so, and it's not because we have the smallest budget. You know, if we were a Fortune 500 company, we'd be in the top 100 of Fortune 500 companies. We do it just based on simple accountability, and I always use this analogy, although I date myself. When a Marine checks into a battalion, you check out a shelter half, 5 tent pins, and 3 tent poles. And when you check out, you turn in a shelter half, 3 tent poles, and 5 tent pins, or you get your butt down to Saigon Sam's, you buy them. Because you're signed for them, you're accountable for them. We hold commanders accountable for every dollar that they spend, for every dollar that has to be spent for the purpose for which it was appropriated. We run a very tight ship. We're a very efficient service, and we hold commanders accountable. When you fail to meet your obligations, we relieve you.
Thank you. Clearly, you could teach the other branches what the hell they need to be doing. So much for the Doge trying to find fraud, waste, and efficiency. With that, I would like to yield the rest of my time to my good friend, Representative Tran.
Representative Carbajal, thank you so much. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Mr. Secretary, congratulations on your appointment. Today is a historic day. For the first time, a Vietnamese American defense official stands before a Vietnamese American member of Congress. This moment belongs to our parents and every soul who traded everything for a chance at liberty. You and I carry the weight of a diaspora that has never forgotten the sting of oppression. We are the living voice for those silenced by the communist Vietnamese government. We have a moral mandate to hold that regime accountable for its relentless human rights violations. I pray you will stand with me in that fight. We must also ensure the freedom we found here reaches across the Pacific. We must maintain a presence so formidable the Chinese Communist Party understands the Indo-Pacific will never be surrendered to autocracy. This is our moment to lead, not just for our country, but for the legacy and the freedom we were chosen to protect. Mr. Secretary, as you know, I represent the largest Vietnamese community outside of Vietnam. Our community remains deeply concerned about the communist Vietnamese government's unlawful jailing of political prisoners. Will you commit to joining me in calling for Vietnam to free political prisoners and prisoners of conscience?
Congressman, thank you so much for your kind words, sir. Again, I owe this country everything, and I've bled for this country, and I will die for this country, for everything that's given me. And again, a lot of my family members were imprisoned wrongfully, and we need to always stand up against oppression, and that's what our job is in the United States. We didn't ask for this. We didn't ask to be the policeman of the world. We didn't ask to defend, but that's how it is, sir, and we will always fight injustice in this country.
And
sir.
Thank you. I appreciate you standing with me on this. And General Smith, I'm going to shift over to you real quick. We've also seen that 2,500 Marines and 3 warships transferred from the Indo-Pacific to the Middle East to support operations in Iran. What gaps has this created in the Marine Corps' ability to deter our adversaries in the Indo-Pacific, and how are you filling the gaps?
Well, frankly, the gap is unfilled. When you move an expeditionary unit, a Marine expeditionary unit in ARGMU, you simply don't replace it. When you move one force from one combatant command theater to another, you don't replace it. But the beauty of the ARGMU is that it is returnable. It can sail under its own power, and it can return from the Middle East back into the Indo-Pacific. And that is the value of the ARGMU, is it is globally deployable, much like a carrier strike group. It is globally deployable. It can be passed from one combatant commander to another.
I appreciate that. My time is about up, so Chairman, I'll yield about.
Mr. Latrell, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, congratulations. Welcome to the hot seat. Admiral and General, thank you for your service. And everyone in uniform in the audience today, thank you for your service to this amazing country. Admiral and Mr. Secretary and Admiral, you both spoke on overseas shipbuilding and utilizing the yards in foreign countries to build out our boats. Where is the steel coming from that we're going to utilize on these subs and ships?
I think there are multiple sources that could come from global.
Are any of those in the United States?
I can guarantee you that the majority of it, at least for submarines, is coming from the United States of America.
Have you ever heard of Hertha Metals?
No, sir.
Mr. Secretary?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay. You mentioned in your opening statement that everything that goes into the Department of War and the build-out of our ships and boats is going to touch each one of our districts. Well, Hertha Metals happens to be in my district. And they produce a cheaper, more viable steel than anyone else, period. And they are in the process of sitting on G, waiting on O. And Mr. Secretary, you mentioned that the Deputy Secretary has got some sort of announcement that he's going to make. And my concern is, and we had a very interesting hearing yesterday with the 5 families, if you will, and the concern is the Department of War has a tendency to take everyone up to a specific spot and they kind of go on pause. Well, Hertha Metals is that small, refined company that is very capable, but if the Department of War does not activate, they're going to be in a very bad spot. And now I'm not going to hold you to, you're going to give me this answer tonight, or excuse me, today or tomorrow. But I do not, my concern is that company that's worked so hard to produce something that would just benefit the United States will be lost because of the inactivity or inaction of the secretaries and the Department of War. Understood?
Yes, Congressman.
Okay. Mr. Secretary, a few weeks, maybe months ago, you and I had a conversation in my office, and one of your primary concerns was the health and well-being, specifically focused around suicide in our service. I'm going to allow you to speak on that in front of this committee, in front of the world that's watching, on your pathway or the lane that you plan on walking to decrease that problem, not only that we have inside of our service, but most certainly in our veteran community.
Congressman, thank you so much for this opportunity. This is so near and dear to my heart. I come from a community, the EOD community, which has one of the largest suicide rates in our veterans, and it's unacceptable. We've done what our country asked us to do, and now we're paying the prices of that. And I think the first thing is for leaders to be very vulnerable. This morning I released a message to the fleet about my issues that I've suffered from traumatic brain injury from being in explosions, as well as PTSD from having to recover bodies from the bottom of the ocean, and as well as recovering pieces and parts from other bodies that I recovered on the battlefield as well. We need to do everything from explore every single avenue, like we discussed in your office, for PTSD, for TBI, including hyperbaric oxygen therapy. You're talking about a lot of the other medicinal
Psychedelics.
Yes, sir. We need to explore every single thing for our military members, but also what I've asked my service chiefs to do is look at crisis intervention. We need to train this at every level, from the petty officer to the NCO level, all the way up to command leadership, because everybody is a first responder. When you're with your sailors and Marines, you know when you're working with them in that squad, in that platoon, in that division, you know when they're not right. And so we need for every single sailor and Marine to be that first responder who says, come along with me. Let's take a walk. Let's talk about what's going on. And these are things we're pushing forward, sir, and we're leaning very heavily into it.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And I have two more things. One, I would hate to see the steel that we use on our ships and subs come from another country if we have the capability inside of the United States. And I will. And General, you're not going to. Yeah, okay, two things. This is going to be very hard as a Navy man talking to a Marine. But the way that I understand it, sir, is you are the very first Texas A&M combat out of the Marine Corps. Is that true?
I believe that is correct, sir.
Okay, so I have to, there's my Aggie right there waiting. I was waiting for him to chime in. As a Navy guy, giving a Marine a compliment, congratulations, sir. And as a Longhorn, giving an Aggie a compliment, job well done.
It's a great way to have
Chairman,
your
I
time
yield back.
expire.
My daughter's a
Great.
Longhorn.
Mr. Keating, you're recognized.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to thank our witnesses for their service and for being here today. At this stage of the hearing, I'm going to get a little granular on issues and maybe a little provincial, but the whole idea of the procurement process that goes forward, there's a couple of things that we've worked, I think, as a committee to try and promote. One of them, myself in particular, is the encouragement of universities and our schools of learning, our great resource in this country, being part of the process of procurement and dealing with issues. And I've had a program since fiscal year 19 funded, it's zero funded now, out of the University of Massachusetts, but it's been a win-win situation. They work with the Undersea Navy College to bring students over. They're learning. They're part of it. Many of them are going on to help our defense industry going forward and undersea technology. And the research helps, as well as getting young people involved that are going to go into service of our country in these regards. So is there still a role for this university component as the Navy is looking at some of these contracts and agreements? Because I think it's important to emphasize, and I'm obviously concerned about this one that was zero funded, but I'm concerned generally too, because the universities come in and they're not a bottom line company or corporation that has to just first look at their shareholders first for profits. They're coming in, I think, with open eyes, and they give a different look to things. So is that something that I think can continue or should continue going forward in the process?
Congressman, I think we need to look at every single aspect. I mean, MIT, Lincoln Labs, all these other industry, other centers of learning are so important to look at things a different way. I mean, as much as I love the Naval Academy, I can't have every single officer come from the Naval Academy. And again, we need people in the Merchant Marine as well. So U.S. Merchant Marine Academy produces amazing merchant mariners, but also Massachusetts and Maine Maritime Academies as well for our civilian merchant marines as well. So we need the whole country to roll up their sleeves and lean into this, whether it's research and development, technology, innovation, and as well as filling our officer ranks and our merchant marine ranks as well, sir. And I'll turn over to Admiral Collerell. He's got a lot more experiences in this as well.
Sir, I'm glad you're championing this. I think it's important. This is full spectrum for us. We need more R&D from universities, of course. We need more STEM degree-seeking students. We need more vocational private-public partnerships with vocational schools to generate the talent and the skill sets we need. And then, quite frankly, I actually leverage additional and unused space today to actually do my own Navy schools in partnership with universities to leverage their empty classrooms. So it's just across the spectrum of academia that we actually need to outgun this. So I completely agree with the Secretary on that. and fully committed to doing more there.
Great. I'll follow up with that, but I thought that was the policy, and it's been working so well on so many fronts that are needs. I'm almost out of time. Another thing we're working on in procurement is just trying to get smaller companies involved instead of the larger corporations. And I had one in my district in New Bedford, and see if I can summarize this quickly. But they were told that unmanned warships were needed quickly. They ran through a competition called the Modular Attack Surface Craft Competition. And here's the concern with some of the smaller ones. And I'll just raise it, and you really don't have to answer it, but I just want you to hear it again. When they're doing this and they're trying to get capital in, these small companies, they're not like the large corporations in doing that. There's changes that occur in the process. So they're going into this with one prototype, and then after already selecting the companies, then they're moving to different prototypes. They're changing course. And that causes, for smaller companies, a great difficulty. So I'll just raise that as an issue, as a way to try and ameliorate some of those conflicts, because what happens with the smaller companies like that, that can offer so much innovation more quickly, they turn around and they lose their capital. They can't sustain that. So I just offer that as a comment. I thank you again. This committee has had a priority on working on the procurement issue, I think with some real success, and I thank you for your service. I yield back.
Mr. Fallon, you're recognized for
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ameliorate, that is a word I'm going to look up. Very good. Secretary Cow, in your opening remarks, you mentioned what your family lost into the hands of communist authoritarians, and it was stirring, and it literally gave me goosebumps. I recall, it just gave us perspective, I think, on what we're all doing here. When I was knocking on doors years ago, I met a fella in a similar circumstance, lost everything, and he was a brand new voter, and he grabbed my shoulder and he said, "This is the last life raft of liberty we have. We have nowhere else to go." So thank you for sharing that. Secretary Cal, you also mentioned you've known Rob Goucher, Admiral Goucher, for 36 years. The starting center for my high school football team was a fellow named Rob Goucher, which means by math, I know I've known him 41 years. So I gotcha. Looking over the materials to prepare for this hearing, I still noted that the afloat manning requirement were 20,000 shy. And we had missed recruiting goals in the past, and we hit them now. What I'd love to do is ask you and Admiral Caudle what you think, how we can help you and what you all are doing to ensure, number one, that we continue to meet our recruiting goals.
Thank you so much for just all your comments, Congressman. Last year alone, we exceeded recruiting by 8,600 new entrants into the Navy, above what we did in previous years. This year, we're well above we're going to meet above 11,000 more entrants. But we need to pay these guys, and this is why we need to pass this bill, sir, so that we make sure that we're giving the retention bonus and the enlistment bonus as well, and keep them in, as well as providing safe, clean, comfortable housing for them at the same time, getting them the right training they need. And so that's why I'm asking this body to please pass this bill, because we need it in order to pay our debt to these young men and women who raised their hands. And I want to add to give it over to Admiral Caudle for anything he might want to add.
Just real quick, you know, mission improves our recruiting and retention.
Mm-hmm.
People love what they do in the Navy. You will see record retention coming from the Forward Strike Group. It's just the opposite of the lay people think. You know, as the Secretary said, they're not coming back head held low, they're prideful. And so our mission is what's recruiting and seeing record retention. But if any ask I would give you, when you grow the force the way we have with 10, 11, 12,000 additional recruits, my A school, C school pipeline can be impeded by infrastructure requirements. So, you know, I need the infrastructure money to improve the barracks at my schoolhouses to make sure they got a place to sleep without being forced to a room.
Well, Admiral, I appreciate your comments about the most valuable resource you have is your sailors and their heartbeat of the Navy, and I fully agree with that. General, it was great to see you again. I very much enjoyed meeting with you and your staff, high performers all around. Can you visit with me a little bit and the committee on being the one branch that has met the recruiting goals every year, why you think you did that, and what best practices you can share with the other services?
Well, sir, we have a systematic recruiting system. We have a professional recruiting force, which combines with those Marines who are assigned to recruiting duty. We hold them accountable for their mission, just like we hold all Marines accountable for their mission, and we reward them when they successfully complete a recruiting tour, and we relieve them when they don't meet their mission. I mean, it is a simple, you're required to go recruit this many people. If you fail that mission, we relieve you and move you on. If you successfully complete it, you're rewarded and you're sent back to your MOS. We have a professional element of our recruiting force. We call them 84 Wonderfuls, 84 12s. They are full-time recruiters, so we combine full-time recruiters with those who are sent out through the recruiting school. We have a very professionalized recruiting force. We do systematic recruiting. You make so many phone calls, you get so many contacts leads to so many contracts. We have great relationships with our high schools. We have full and open access to high schools, and our recruiters are just working hard. They're Marines. They don't know how to fail.
Hoorah. In the time we have left, Mr. Secretary, pilot retention, can we talk a little bit about that, what we need to do? Or Admiral, want to just jump in there real quick, because I noticed that we're having a little bit of an issue with that as well.
Again, sir, it's going to be about the retention bonuses and reducing the PCS, but I'll turn over to Admiral Caldwell real fast, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, it is a problem. That's a critical point of all of our communities at the department head level, where we get them to sign, and then we got them for a career. And so the aviation community, we're going full in on that. Part of that is a bit of an artifact of backlog and the experience. So as we improve the experience for aviators, then I think the retention improvements will come.
Amen. And my time has expired. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Yeah. Ms. Ulan, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary Cow, you made some really interesting statements in 2024 in a debate that you had with Senator Kaine. You said, what we need is alpha males and alpha females who are going to rip out their guts, eat them, and ask for seconds. Those are young men and women that are going to win wars. Mr. Secretary, did you say that? And do you stand by that?
Absolutely, ma'am. I did say that, and I stand by it. I command a Naval Diving Salvage Training Center. We had one standard only. It doesn't matter if you're man, woman, black or white, because the sea is unforgiving, and things like war and hardship is going to kill you the same.
Perfect.
My job is to make sure they live.
I agree with you.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'll stop you there. Mr. Secretary, it is really wonderful to hear that you're supportive of everyone serving in the military, brown, white, black, or women, as you mentioned, especially the alpha ones, and I agree with that as well. I was wondering if you might share that support of those kinds of people, women included, with Secretary Hegseth, because it seems as though he has a very different perspective on that.
Congresswoman, Secretary Hegseth and I are in line that as long as you meet the standards, then you're ready to serve.
Perfect. And then my next question, Mr. Secretary, is since you are supportive, and apparently Mr. Hegseth is as well, of women in service, or at least of gender-neutral standards, I'm hopeful that you might take a look and be supportive of a bill that supports removing gender standards from service so that everyone is able to fit one standard. It's a bill called the Warrior Act. It's a bill that I've introduced, and it would codify or put into law these standards of gender-neutral requirements to make sure that everyone, women included, who's qualified to serve would be able to. Would you be supportive of that, sir?
Congressman, if they meet the standards in accordance with the rules and regulations, then again, I'm not a member of this House, so I can't support or not support.
I would love it if you would take a look at that, because it is not without precedence that people such as you are supportive of ideas that come out of the Congress. And this Warrior Act is something that, given your stance on these issues, I would imagine that you would be supportive of. And it sounds as though, given your relationship with Mr. Hegseth and your understanding of his belief, that he should also be supportive of it as well. Sometimes, unfortunately, we actually have to put things in law that are common sense, and I would love it if you take a look at the Warrior Act. Similarly, one of the things that's frustrating to me, and it's come up in this conversation quite a few times, is that it's totally true that we need to be the most lethal force in the world in order to be successful. But we have, for whatever reason, begun to undermine the fact that bronze is not enough, that we also need to have brains to be able to be successful in the military, and that technology and STEM education and all of those kinds of things are just as important as having somebody who's strong enough to carry a person. And one of the things that I'm really frustrated by in these conversations is we have maligned education, we have maligned research, we have maligned all of the things that make it possible for us to not only have lethality in our bronze, but also lethality in our brains. Admiral, I'd love it if you'd talk a little bit more about the fact that you have hit now 3 times during this hearing on the importance of STEM education.
Well, Congresswoman, I mean, I hold 4 degrees myself, including a doctorate, so I am a lifelong learner and firmly believe in everything you're saying, that everyone should be a lifelong learner. So STEM education is extremely important in this. And I'm always in close collaboration with our Naval Academy and the ROTC units and, of course, the other programs, OCS, and making sure that the pie chart of STEM coming into the Navy is proper. I have to tension that a bit. You know, as far as, you know, sex-based differences, you know, one of the things that really has opened that up is women in submarines and some of the other initiatives who have a preponderance of the STEM degrees. So, you know, that's an area where I think there's been a real strength in that.
100%, and I would love to continue to emphasize the importance of that and to make sure that we have career paths, clear career paths that make people feel as though they're welcome in these services, all of them. My father served in the Navy, my grandfather as well. I served in the Air Force, my brother in the Army. But I also want to make sure that we stop and knock off the nonsense of maligning places like Harvard or MIT. Those things have both come up now. We work so hard to be not just the best military in the world, but also to have the best schools in the world. And it's really, really important that we do that as well. I appreciate your time, gentlemen, and I yield back.
Mr. Moylan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, congratulations. I'm glad we had the opportunity in your previous position, but I understand you're still holding that as well as being the S-Dog for our Indo-PACOM area. It's a wonderful experience I've had with you. I appreciate the visits that you have gone to Guam and the conversations that you had, making sure Indo-PACOM is really protected. I'm very proud and I'm very happy that you're selected for this secretary. Thank you so much. Admiral, I want to say thanks for mentioning the submariners on Guam. I tell you, I had a few conversations with a few of them, young folks too, and some of them even married on different ships, but it's really interesting how excited they are to be in the submarine because in Guam, once you pull out the dock, you just go out a little drive and you're down deep as fast as possible. It's quite exciting. They tell me all about it. I wouldn't want to get on that sub. I'm an Army guy, but I'm glad they're there, and I appreciate your support in the Indo-PACOM area as well. General, thank you. Guam has had a great experience with the Marine Corps since World War II. We're looking forward to the Marines coming on back as we continue to do the buildup. Camp Ben Boss, our first Marine general from Guam, fine name for that camp. And driving down Marine Corps Drive, I'm looking forward to seeing the Marines occupy that camp as soon as possible. So I thank the Marines, and I'm glad we had this, and I thank you all for your interest in the most western soil of the United States of America, that being Guam. Thank you so much for that. Secretary, you know, we had the opportunity, I thank you for coming to my office also with Assistant Secretary Rogers. We were discussing the housing issue on Guam. As we had this buildup, we're a small island, it's quite difficult to keep up with the demand of housing. So we roughly have $300 million that's been requested for housing construction in Guam for 2027. And can you discuss what are your efforts for your department on taking to reducing the military demands on the housing market in Guam, and can provide us some more updates how the department plans to reduce reliance on existing housing stock while accommodating more focus stationed in Guam?
Congressman, thank you so much for your kind words. I mean, what an amazing country this is, that 51 years ago when I landed in Guam as a refugee, that I came back as a senior defense official Guam. And only in America can something like that happen. And I think that God is kind of laughing. The Lord has a sense of humor in this. So in terms of housing in Guam, we are looking at the most economical way to develop there for our military members, as well as giving a little leeway for the population there. I know that we talked about making sure that people aren't getting gouged, which drives up the cost of the housing. But I also understand all the problems that happened with Typhoon Marwar that happened there. So we will continue to work together Congressman, in order to make sure that we're developing Guam in the most expeditious manner, including what we did recently with the working with the Department of Transportation for the guarantee cranes at the port there as well, sir. We're going to fight for Guam, and we're going to fight from Guam, and that's why Guam is so important to us, sir.
Thank you for that. Also, in addition to the housing, we have the power situation. We're so small, right? We're sharing with the Guam Power Authority, but we're also talking about the small modular reactors. But there still has to be a balance, since there's a lot of workforce outside and not all the small nuclear reactors, if that does come. And by the way, in law, we also put there's a one-year notification before that does come to the island if it is planned and goes forward, just to make sure you're awareness of that. But how do you plan to work the Guam Power Authority into your plans as we build up the power grid needs?
Congressman, again, we need power for the defense of Guam with all the Guam defense systems out there. So we will work hand in hand with the government of Guam in order to ensure that we stabilize the energy there, as well as secure it. I mean, as you know, the Chinese have been trying to hack into Guam for years, and so we need to secure the IT infrastructure in Guam as well, while we're securing the water and the power supplies for the island.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. General, are the Marines coming to Guam? Give us an update.
Sir, we are. We are building out Camp Blas, as you know. We're going to occupy that in accordance with the DPRI, the Defense Posture Review Initiative, but we are coming to Guam, and we're excited about it.
Thank you. Looking forward to coming back to Guam and staying on Guam.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, you back.
Mr. Golden, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, gentlemen. I have to confess I was a little bit dismayed to see that the President's budget request included procurement for only one destroyer, down from the usual 2 or 3 under previous administrations. I heard just yesterday from General Dynamics in a public setting that this week demand signal, if approved by Congress, would trigger layoffs at Bath Iron Works as soon as next year. So imagine my surprise when I next received the U.S. Navy shipbuilding plan, which said the department seeks congressional authority to build ships with foreign labor in foreign yards. And sir, I've read the plan. You aren't just proposing sending American workers to learn from foreign builders, which, as an aside, I don't think you would want to go to a yard of American workers and tell them that you think they need to go overseas to learn their craft. On page 37, it says you want to build hulls in foreign yards, and you specifically say you intend to seek authority in this year's defense bill to build entire ships and hulls of others overseas. Stop and think about that. In the same year that American shipbuilders might get laid off, the U.S. Navy wants to employ foreign workers. Good luck selling that as anything but a one-for-one trade-off. I can't believe the Navy would even consider it, and it would be an absolute shame if the Congress approved it. Secretary Hegseth was before this committee just a few weeks ago, and we talked a little bit about shipbuilding, so I've already heard a part of the justification, the backlog of ships. I don't blame the Navy for wanting more surface ships in the fleet, but sir, there are no shortcuts to building a first-class combatant ship. I've stood on foreign ships before, and compared to ours, I thought it felt like it was made out of plastic. I kid you not. I think you'd have a hard time going to your sailors and asking them how they feel about going into a fight, essentially on a hunk of junk. I would challenge the administration to claim that American shipbuilders don't build it best, especially the shipbuilders from my state, where everyone knows the phrase, Bath built, best built. There's many levers the Navy could pull to speed up ship construction. But you know what you absolutely do without, and that's experienced shipbuilders that know how to build it right. Walk the shipyards and talk to the workers, and you will get a sense that the work going on there stands upon the shoulders of generations of shipbuilding knowledge, and the skill set to build top-notch ships at pace just doesn't happen overnight. The country needs to protect this core national security asset, shipbuilders with the knowledge base and skill sets to build our naval fleet. The Navy sees an opportunity to build faster with foreign labor. I see nothing but risk. And given the justifications offered, I just don't see how the juice is worth the squeeze. The backlog is nothing, in my opinion, but a present-day demand signal that incentivizes shipyard investments in both infrastructure and in the American shipbuilder. In the past few years, I have watched Bath Iron Works carry out a recruitment campaign. They've trained young shipbuilders, and they've successfully increased their rate of production year over year coming out of COVID, and they aren't done making progress on that front. But now this proposal would literally pull the rug out from underneath them, and it's not just BIW. This proposal would send work overseas across multiple platforms. This administration has said over and over that it will prioritize American manufacturing. How could those goals possibly square with a request to offshore American fleet production? Every hull that gets sent overseas weakens America's shipbuilders, making it harder for them to maintain the capacity, knowledge, and technical skills necessary to build and maintain the fleet that your sailors are going to go to war in. This proposal weakens America's industrial base. It would weaken our American supply chains, and most importantly, it puts at risk the benefits of innovation that happen only on deck plates. And I'm not talking about engineers or AI. I'm talking about the type of innovation you get from a shipbuilder. To send any portion of our shipbuilding overseas would be a complete failure. There's no way I will support that proposal, and I hope that my colleagues in this Congress join me in opposing it. Even better would be for the Navy to withdraw it, rethink it, and come back with a plan to strengthen American shipyards. There's no way that you had much involvement in the drafting of this. It didn't happen in 3 weeks, but I'm going to forget trying to pull it out of my memory. But General Powell, I think, said in his 13 Rules of Leadership, when you come into a new command position, don't just go making changes immediately. And I can't quite remember if it's 30 days or 90 days, but I'll go with 30. After 30 days, sir, you own it.
Thank you, Congressman. Again, we have 80 ships on contract and 59 in construction right now. And I just need for Bath Iron Works, if they can, again, I would love to add 10 destroyers in every year if we could.
You guys can finish this conversation later. The gentleman's time has expired, and I know you will. Dr. McCormick, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's great to have you all here. It's near and dear to my heart as both a Marine Corps and Navy veteran. Welcome and congratulations for passing 3 consecutive audits, and congratulations to your son for becoming a Marine Corps officer. I'm really excited about that. I'm a little jealous. Ronnie Jackson just had his son commissioned in the Marine Corps as well, as you know. And congratulations for having 4 degrees. I'm a little jealous of that, too. One of the interesting things that came up, you expressed in your opening remarks, the greatness of having 3 Marine Expeditionary Units deployed at any given time to react to all the things that are going around the world. The Assistant Commandant came here and actually testified that we needed, basically, in order to sustain those 3 ARG/MUs, basically a 40-ship amphibious fleet. Do you agree with that?
I do, sir. It's a combination of making what we have more ready and a combination of that combined with buying new.
Okay. Admiral, one of the things I saw in your 40 amphib ships doesn't really match your plan. I looked at your plan, and the last time I saw the Navy's 30-ship building plan tops out at 35 amphib ships, and that is in 2055. Am I incorrect in any of that reading?
Sir, I can tell you, I think until recent, meaning within the last year, have we come and become aligned on 3.0. And so the Navy was committed to 31. And when we, really, realized, I am all about 3.0, that I needed some space to go understand the 4th generation process. Losing the Bahama Shard hurt. All the things that we're doing to improve the readiness before I can land a full number. But if you just do 3.0 ARG/MU, that's 9 ships. And if you say a 4 to make 1 or a 5 to make 1, that lands somewhere between 36 ships and 45 ships. Yeah. So initial rough order of magnitude 40 ships, that can't be that far off.
So when I'm a simple Marine, I only can get up to 20 because I run out of toes and fingers. So your degrees outmatch my fingers in many ways. But when I turn to the Secretary, who I consider a friend and I've spent time with, and I say, how do we reconcile those numbers when our best ship contract is 6 months behind and, and about 150% over budget? And we do have shipping problems here in America. And I get the challenge where we've fallen behind. I went to Japan and Korea recently and looked at their shipbuilding. What are they doing differently? How they modernize, how they've gotten better at us than us. I mean, they deliver almost every ship under budget and on time. We never do that. And our shipping industry is basically clapped on itself. No offense to the guys who do it, but we're obviously not doing something right. And so I applaud you for thinking outside the box. Whatever the answer is, bringing in their abilities, bringing in their technologies, bringing in their management skills, whatever it is, we need to change business, obviously. I'm trying to ask the Secretary, how do we reconcile the difference between 40 and 35 ships, and how do we get back on time? It's not just the way we contract, it's the way we build. How do we reconcile that?
You're absolutely right, Congressman. Again, we put out a 30-year shipbuilding plan, but we have to really be honest and say we need to concentrate in 5, 10, and then change for 15. This is a living document that we need to continually evolve and change based on what the industry can produce. And this is why we need to look at every single lever, every single opportunity to make things better, faster, through AI, through added manufacturing. Things will change a great deal, sir. In 5, 10 years, we're going to get the industry going, and we will crank out these ships, including amphibious ships and destroyers as we need them, sir.
I like the positive thought, but I was just looking at the recent fiscal year 27 budget. I noticed the LHA 8 and 9 are both a year behind now. And we obviously, that's exactly what we're talking about right now, is an amphibious fleet. And I know the positivity's there, but I'm looking for, I don't care if we have to build ships overseas or whatever, but I want to bring that technology back. I want to bring that know-how back. I want to bring work ethic back. I want to bring all the things back to America that made us the leaders in the world originally. What is the specific plan to get American production back on track? Love our ship workers, but something's broke for sure.
And that would be more shipyards, Congressman, and more getting the youth to come in. We're looking at 540,000 jobs in order to build all these ships, not just our warships, but also commercial ships. And that's what we need to invigorate, and that's what we need to get in there. That's why I'm so excited. And again, in a few weeks, I will be able to come into your office and tell you, hey, in 24 hours, we're gonna announce this.
I look forward to that. Right now, China's out producing us about 200 to 1 and has about 50 times more ports. That's a problem. Thank you, and with that, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today. It's good to see you. Admiral, the Secretary was here, Secretary Hegseth here a couple weeks ago. I asked him about the extension of the USS Ford Carrier Strike Group had been extended. And I asked him, which I didn't think was a satisfactory answer that he gave, right? What did the Navy tell him when they were modifying the gift map to extend, the Ford going to the Med and then down to South America, and then obviously at the end here doing operations in the Persian Gulf, crossed the equator multiple times. If there's a polywog left on that ship, it's going to surprise me. But what concerns did you raise during that process when they were modifying the gift map, and what are the ramifications going to be for it being extended out for over 300 days?
Sir, if you Google me and extensions, you'll see extensive articles out there on my pushback on extending any ship. It has detrimental impacts on our force readiness, on families, on sailors, the quality of their life, things that they miss, and the wear and tear, and then just the additional cost. But when we need military options for sea, we have to utilize what we have. We fight with the Navy we have. And so we make those risks apparent to the chairman. He carries those up echelon to the Secretary of War. We clearly articulate the impacts of that, and the hard decisions are made. And when it's made, we move out. And then we conduct those operations, and you see our sailors rise to that occasion.
And believe me, I know our sailors and our Marines and all our forces, right, are going to rise. They're going to do what needs to be done whenever the situation calls for it. I have no doubt about that. But, when you look at the situation, had 2 other carriers around there. You had an ARG and another ARG on the way. Really, did the Ford need to be there?
Absolutely, sir. 100%.
And why is that? Why did we need more than one carrier group, strike group there to kind of do it? If this wasn't the and to going back to historical times here, right? This wasn't the Japanese during World War II. This wasn't the Spanish Armada, in the early 16th century. This was a small naval force with the Iranians, right? This wasn't a huge military force that we were facing. Why did we need 3 strike groups and an ARG there to carry out this operation?
Sir, the planners at the U.S. Central Command and at Fifth Fleet go through detailed threat analysis to understand that the actual axis and threats, directionality, and the things that we can do as a combat force to make sure we have overlapping fires and protection for our forces requires a certain amount of force as force elements roll in and out in a make-before-break fashion. So that rolling amount of force has to be put in place. We don't evacuate the theater of operations before the next one comes in. That scheme of maneuver is delicate, it's balanced, and it's threat-based. And so that's all put out in front of all of us. We all look at it, and we concur with those schemes of maneuver.
All right. Well, thank you for that answer. But I don't think we needed it there, and I think it was more extended. You could add another carrier there than was needed. General, good to see you again. Hope your health is good.
Yes, sir. I'm back to my fighting weight.
Good. Glad to hear it. You know, I'm a Gator sailor, very big on the ARG. Want to make sure that we get to what you need to be. And I know you're kind of, like you said, you're working towards this 3.0, but I didn't really get that was really, once we get there, that's where we need to be. What is it going to take beyond that, where you're trying to get to right now, to get to where you believe the Marine Corps and the ARG needs? Because we are constantly, again, the COCOMs, they're asking for the carriers, they're asking for the ARG out there, right? And right now we don't really, I think, have enough to supply what's needed. So what's going to be needed that you need to ensure that we can answer the call when needed?
Well, sir, the Marines have the capability to provide a constant 3.0 ARGMU presence. We have the squadrons, the infantry battalions, the artillery batteries. What we're working on in concert with Admiral Caudle and the Navy is the ability to make our ships more ready, to make what we have more ready, because it's not just about the deployment, it's about the workup. Because as I often say, the first time you land on a pitching rolling deck shouldn't be at night on your way to a fight. You got to have a 6-month workup, or at least most of a 6-month workup, followed by a 6-month deployment. And then you have to have downtime, because those sailors and Marines, they signed up to deploy, but they also have families and they want to come home. And so the ability to man a 3.0 ARGMU presence is really our North Star. And that comes down to how many amphibs can we have that are made ready. And Admiral Caudle is doing everything he can do, along with Fleet Forces Command, to increase the readiness of those amphibs.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Wisconsin,
Thank you all.
Mr. Van Orden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for coming out today. Mick Pond, great to see you back there. I just want to address a couple things. You know, I'm the longest serving enlisted guy to ever get elected to Congress in the history of the country, which means you can't lie to me. I got all your numbers. Okay, on the old Facebook sphere, I want to clear up some stuff. There's rumors going around with people my age that the NEXs and PXs are closing on bases. Is that correct? Just say it out loud, man.
No.
Okay, I want everyone on Facebook to hear what the Admiral just said.
If anything, we're improving them.
Okay, thank you very much. It's really important. We got to dispel a lot of this stuff. General, congratulations on your passing your audit, but I'm going to tell you this. You guys are notorious for not asking for stuff. Okay? So, you know, we're here to provide everything that our Marines need. And so you got to ask, and I know it pains you guys terribly. I love the Marine Corps. You just got to ask. So if you have O&M deficits and Marines are buying equipment and all that sort of stuff, that is unacceptable. And we'll get your Marines everything they need.
Thank you, sir.
Ask. You're welcome. Mr. Secretary, where are you from again? Where were you born?
I was born in Vietnam.
You were. And when did you learn to speak English?
At the age of 12, Congressman.
At the age of 12. So you came here from Vietnam, and you became an American citizen.
Yes, sir.
And then you retired as a Navy captain.
Yes, sir.
Did any of that have to do with the fact that you're Vietnamese by birth?
No, sir, it did not.
It did not. Did it have anything to do with the fact that you could speak 2 different languages?
No, sir, it did not.
It didn't. Why did you retire as a captain?
Sir, I retired at the time because after what happened in Afghanistan, I just couldn't, I couldn't do it anymore.
I will answer your question. You retired as an 06 because of merit, because you earned that position. And I do need to make it real clear to some of my colleagues that the United States military is the last meritocracy, and it has to remain. We don't care that you were born in Vietnam. We don't care that you're a naturalized citizen. We don't care that you speak 2 languages. We don't care if you're a man or you're a woman, if you're black or you're Mexican. We don't care. As long as the military maintains that. And my Navy looks at people solely through the lens of meritocracy, then you're going to do great. I do want to bring up, I'm going to echo what my friend Morgan Luttrell said about suicide in the military and in the veterans community. I'm a chairman of a subcommittee on VA. Its economic opportunity and prevention of veteran suicide is one of my taskings, and I'll be honest, we are failing at it. The predominant problem that I've had in the past is with the Department of War in the transition assistance program. So a lot of our veterans commit suicide within that first 24 months after getting out of the military because you lose your uniform, your rank, and the joke with the wives is twice the husband, half the paycheck, you know. So what I want from you guys, Admiral and General, is I do want a commitment. I'm going to ask you for a commitment, and from you, Mr. Secretary, that you're going to work with us at the Veterans Affairs Committee. And with Doug Collins, Doug and Pete signed, you know, an amazing MOU, and I really need follow-up on this because you're not making just sailors and you're not making Marines. You're making Americans, and you're making strong American citizens. And we want to look at someone from the time they join the military. So in recruitment to the grave. And I want a public commitment from you guys that you're going to continue to work with us and really increase your efforts. Admiral, will you do that with us?
Yes, sir. Fully committed to that.
Mr. Secretary?
Sir, as a veteran and a retiree, yes, sir.
Okay, General?
Sir, 100%.
Okay. I will echo some of my Democrat colleagues. As many ships as we can build in the United States, we want to build them. I understand that we have to go outside of our lines of communications right now because we just have lost the capacity. But I firmly believe that our American men and women, our tradesmen and women, are the best in the world. So as long as you guys you're filling a gap that exists right now, but you're also focusing on making sure that we can build up our defense industrial base, particularly in the maritime arena, I think that we're going to do the right thing. So welcome aboard again, I guess. General, anything you guys need for your Marines, you ask, sir.
Will do, sir.
And Admiral, take care of my Navy, will you?
Will, sir.
Congressman, just
take care
if
of
I
the
may,
sailors.
sir.
You may.
Just real fast, I know everybody loves the Marine Corps, Marsha, but the Navy has also, it's very close to finishing the working capital fund. We're months ahead, and by next year, so we're going to finish that, and then the general fund will be done next year. So the Department of Navy will be the first department in the Department of War to complete a clean audit, sir.
Excellent, thank you. I yield.
As is a gentlelady from New Hampshire, Ms. Goodlander.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses for your service to our country and for being here today. Mr. Cow, thank you for that very clear commitment that the Navy will be the first of the departments to pass a clean audit. You testified that part of your mission is to restore trust in the Navy, and public trust depends upon a clean audit. So we look forward to the swift delivery on that most basic requirement that any organization in the state I represent would hold themselves to. So I want to ask you, along the lines of restoring trust, a really basic question. As I look at the department's budget and where we could really crack down on waste, fraud, and abuse, I think a lot about the right to repair. Do you agree, Mr. Cow, that the Navy should be able to repair and maintain its own equipment?
Congresswoman, absolutely. We paid for a lot of this RDT&E. I mean, for my car, for example, I don't have the right to repair because, I don't have the intellectual property. But we paid for this RDT&E, so the way I see it, it's our property as well, and we should have the right to repair this, ma'am.
So can I count on your support for our Warrior Right to Repair Act in this year's NDAA?
Is that to repair our equipment?
It's to codify the right of our service members to repair and maintain their own equipment.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and we really look forward to working with you on this. Your predecessor had a clear commitment to this cause, and really look forward to working with you on this. I want to turn to you, Admiral. You testified. Thank you for your testimony on our public naval shipyards. You testified that the most important driver to improving shipyard performance is workforce retention, stability, and development. You also testified that this past year we've seen higher than expected attrition and lower than planned new hires, which led to, as you put it, gaps in the engineering workforce and in critical trade shops. I want to ask you for your commitment to work with us in this NDAA to put in place some of the most basic protections that the men and women of our shipyards need right now. We've seen their jobs that are already so difficult be made so much harder by policies that are emanating from OPM and OMB, way out of the chain of command that we need to see right now. So I would like to ask for your support for a provision that we're working to advance in this year's NDAA, which would do a simple thing. It would prohibit the use of funds, federal funds, for carrying out a hiring freeze, a reduction in force, or a delay without cause in hiring at a public shipyard. We secured that on a bipartisan basis last year and want to ask for your support and commitment to securing that again this year.
Congresswoman, anything that protects the over 37,000 shipyard workers that are for public yards, you have my full commitment on. They're a national treasure, and I'm fully committed to make sure they don't lose their job and make sure they're properly compensated as well.
How far below the planned new hires were we this past fiscal year?
I'd have to get you the exact number, but you can think of a number like, I would say, like 1,000 kind of number in that order of magnitude. But I'll take that for the record and get you the exact figure.
I appreciate that and would love to be kept closely updated on this. This shouldn't be so difficult. We have patriotic people all across this country in my home state who are eager to serve, and the red tape and the bureaucratic nonsense is harming our readiness and really setting us back so unnecessarily. So I appreciate your commitment. Mr. Cow, can we count on your commitment to work with us on these provisions?
Absolutely, ma'am.
Thank you. I want to turn finally to the submarine industrial base. You know, New Hampshire small businesses are critical suppliers to our submarine industrial base, and what I've seen again and again is that our second and third tier suppliers have been challenged by a whole range of factors. In last year's NDAA, we had a provision that directed the Navy to provide a briefing to this committee no later than January 31st, 2026, to better understand what tools are available to support our second and third tier industrial base suppliers. We still haven't received that briefing. Can you commit to us that we'll get that briefing this month?
We will work on that as soon as we can, ma'am.
Okay. Can we expect before the end of this month?
If you mean 2 weeks, I'll have to look at it, ma'am.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank our witnesses for being here with us today. I want to start by recognizing the sailors and Marines of the USS Gerald R. Ford Strike Group after a historic...
You need to pull that microphone a little bit closer. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by recognizing the sailors and Marines of the USS Gerald R. Ford Strike Group. After a historic record-setting deployment, they're finally almost home to Virginia. This was a historic trip, and they basically were deployed almost a year because we have atrophied in so many ways. And the CCP, for example, has more submarines. They have more ships, more airplanes, more tanks than us, and which is why this budget is so important. This budget gives our sailors and Marines the resources they need to do the job the nation asked with them without having to stretch the fleet to a breaking point. And Secretary Cow, both the Navy and the Marine Corps met recruiting goals last year, and you are on track to do it again this year. What would you say is the driving factors for the recruiting success, and are your quality of life efforts making an impact on retention?
So the main thing is the leadership. They know that we have their backs now, and that's what's so important. Look, our enlisted ranks are the backbone of this military. This is you can talk about the Chinese fleet all day long, but they don't have what we have. The secret sauce is in our enlisted ranks. That's what drives our military. You can be an E9 in the Chinese Navy, and all you can do is sweep the floor. But here, our E3s are plane captains on the USS Gerald R. Ford. This is the difference, sir.
Okay. Admiral Caudell, I know there have been many conversations and questions over the past few days regarding the news that the Trump-class battleship will be nuclear-powered, and as you know, Virginia has a long history of nuclear shipbuilding. What specific design plans can you share at this point and could speak to how nuclear power would enable this system to be successful?
Sir, we walked away from surface nuclear power decades ago, and that was one of the largest mistakes the Navy ever did, and we're bringing it back. We need nuclear-powered surface ships to sustain combat operations with our nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. Imagine what that would have looked like in the Arabian Gulf if I'd had a nuclear-powered battleship there to give the air and defense and fires power that it could sustain while I rotate, ships that roll that need gasoline around it. So the imperative for this is crucial to develop that level of payload capacity. We intend to, with all we can do, use pull-through technologies, things from that we've worked on with DDGX. It will have the SPY-6 radar. It will have the Baseline 10 Aegis combat system. It will pull through, of course, the A-1B Ford-class reactor plant and all the design that goes with that. The only thing inherently new to it will be the actual hull itself. And so most of the fixtures in it, and I would say the directed energy and upgunning, that will also be new.
Awesome. And for the Commandant, General Smith, talk to me about how important it is to have more amphibious ships.
Well, sir, as I've said, the Amphibious Ready Group Marine Expeditionary Unit is the Swiss Army knife of the Joint Force. It can do a little bit of everything. It is a combat formation that is deployable globally. It can move hundreds of miles in a day. It can conduct non-combatant evacuation operations. It can conduct strike. It can conduct humanitarian assistance, disaster relief. It is the Swiss Army knife of the Joint Force, and it is the second most called for item in the DoD inventory by the combatant commanders.
We love the Marine Corps.
Hoorah, sir.
And by the way, Admiral, really appreciate you and the Secretary and what we're doing to take care of our Navy and our Navy sailors and our Marines. And by the way, BWXT, as you know, is in my district, but we also have ATDM, Advanced Training Defense Manufacturing, and we talked about that earlier, and we talk about how we have a need to step up our game and how many ships, how important are places like ATDM?
I just need to rinse, lather, and repeat, sir. I need them all over the country. People ask me what they can do to bolster our defense and maritime industrial base. That's the model. And so I need more of that so that we can expand the recruiting palette that the shipyards, recruit from. Most shipyard workers come within 5 to 10, 15 miles from the shipyard. We need to have countrywide recruiting and development, and that's part of that plan that we need to do.
Well, I agree with the Secretary, and I agree with my friend Derek Van Orden here, is that we want to build all ships and submarines and things in the United States, but we have atrophied for whatever reason. So we have to have partners, go there, learn what they're doing, and grow the American defense industrial base. We really appreciate all of your services. Thank you so much.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize Jen Lee from California. Ms. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Cow, the think tank CSIS estimates Operation Epic Fury cost roughly $900 million a day, about $3.7 billion in the first 100 hours, with $10 to $16 billion in munitions fired in the first 4 days. Your FY27 budget requests $82.6 billion for operations and maintenance from this committee. What portion of that is just buying back what we shot in Epic Fury versus funding the Navy's readiness going forward?
Congresswoman, thank you for the question. None of this budget was built before Epic Fury, this is why we will require supplemental in order to pay for all the munitions and the operations and maintenance that comes with it.
Okay, because with the fleet already 20,000 sailors short on sea billets, I'm concerned that this $340 billion is not actually going to be what you need in terms of buying the ships, the sailors, the magazine depth to sustain what will likely be a sustained CENTCOM presence for years in the Strait of Hormuz. So can you commit to deliver to this committee the department's current assessment of commercial shipping transit through the Strait under U.S. escort, Iranian acquiescence, or neither, along with the Navy's fourth generation plan for sustaining the presence required through FY27?
Congressman, we will provide whatever information you need. Again, this is still an ongoing operation. As of yesterday, they're still launching over 100 one-man, one-way attack drones and more than 3 or 4 dozen cruise missiles at us. So the operations are still going on. Even though there's a ceasefire, they're still firing at us, ma'am.
Sure. But the president said it was over, and now you're saying it's ongoing. So you can understand why we, as the committee that's trying to figure out what you're actually going to need some more information from you all.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. But yes, our operations are kinetic operations have finished. We're just protecting other people, and that's what we're doing with that. The Iranians are still shooting at Allied shipping and just being belligerent, ma'am.
Okay. Well, we would like to know what you all in the Navy are going to need to sustain either this U.S. escort presence or this blockade or, whatever we're doing. So please get that to us. General Smith, as you know, I represent San Diego, the largest military community in the country. There are many reports of the strain on our Marine and Navy families across San Diego. We know Marines are trained for accelerated departure. You guys are first out. This is what you train for, but that doesn't make it any easier on the families, and especially with the lack of information on timelines. And, I talked to one family support counselor who described the current situation in San Diego as panic and worry at levels they had not seen in recent years. And honestly, the family members I talked to, they don't know what support systems are available to them while their family members are deployed. What specific resources, family readiness programs, mental health support, chaplain services, etc., are currently funded and active for the families of the 11th MEU?
Ma'am, the 11th MEU has family readiness coordinators who are active duty members who support the families who are back home. And then they have a family support network, which is comprised of the spouses who are going to keep a phone tree, so to speak, to keep themselves informed. And then the command has the responsibility to keep those families informed via those coordinators.
Okay, well, whatever is happening is not enough. Families are not getting what they need. And I'm glad you brought up the family readiness coordinators. I asked Lieutenant General Bowers this at a military personnel subcommittee last month, but there's been recent news that the Marine Corps is phasing out its civilian personnel and family readiness program. These positions are needed now more than ever. These coordinators work with commanders to provide insight on quality of life for Marines and their families, relay information to spouses. Can you provide an update to me on these coordinators? Have you reconsidered this decision to phase out these positions?
Ma'am, I'll have to come back to you on that.
Okay, well, I really hope that you do, because we cannot make this responsibility a collateral duty for our Marines. We will undermine both missions. Our families need to get this information. They need to get this so that our Marines can do their jobs. And my community is paying the brunt of this right now, and it is really, really hard on our community and on our families. So I hope that you'll do everything you can to make sure they're getting the support that they need. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Mesmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for our witnesses for being here today. Secretary Cow, the U.S. Navy's 2026 shipbuilding plan says distributed shipbuilding is about 10% today, and the goal is to get to 50%. Since I've been in Congress, I've advocated for a distributed model that leverages industrial capacity in the Midwest and in the Ohio and Mississippi River valleys. What is going to be the actual metric you will use to measure that 50% goal? Is it dollars, tonnage, modules, and when should we expect to see some real movement in that?
Congressman, I would love for us to build ships along the Mississippi River and modules floated down and put together down in the Gulf of America. I will defer to the Secretary, the CNO, for the metrics that you need.
And Congressman, I think all those metrics have to be measured. Calls performance indices have to be looked at, but I think the best one is the module count. And it's how we distribute those modules to different manufacturers to be able to put that together. The yards today keep records on that and graphics on that and metrics on that. And to me, that's the best way that we'll actually measure that modularity approach.
Okay, if we're going to get to 50% of distributed work, how are we going to incentivize the primes to give up the work share that they historically have done in-house or inside to keep their legacy supplier base intact? How are we going to incentivize it? You're going to mandate it? I mean, how are we going to get from where we are today to more modules?
Well, that's going to come through collaboration and partnerships, contractual strategies that incentivize, talking about how we actually improve refacilitization with additional partners to actually get into the game. I think there's a concern that they can't deliver and they'll become the critical path because their inability to deliver the module. So we need to prototype that and make sure that these additional manufacturers can do that, build confidence. And then when the actual demand signal gets there and the prime yards realize they're actually making more money by this approach, I think it'll solve itself.
Okay. Very good. Mr. Secretary, your shipbuilding plan says the department accepted proprietary, locked-in, and undervalued its IP rights in ways that degraded organic maintenance. Is part of that reason? Is that part of the reason the Navy still struggles to sustain the legacy Spy-1 radar systems?
Congressman, again, Spy-1, a lot of the pieces and parts are no longer constructed. But again, you're right. We need to have the right to repair. We need to be able to get in there. Our sailors are just so talented, and they can fix anything. I've seen this with my own eyes in combat, where if something goes down, they're working all day and all night to get these things up and going. And it's just very difficult to get a contractor out there in the middle while you're getting shot out in the Straits of Hormuz. So, yes, sir, this is why we need to make sure that we have
right to repair is very critical. Thank you. Admiral Cottle, is the USS Zumwalt still on track to conduct the first afloat conventional prop strike test in 2027? And what's your realistic timeline for that weapon system to reach initial operation capability?
Sir, I think it is on track to do that test, and I think its IOC for that will be probably in the late part of this decade before I would claim that it's fully ready and operational.
Okay. Reporting indicates the Navy is considering replacing the Spy-3 radar with a Spy-6. Will this shift create additional schedule or cost risk for CPS fielding and delay the Navy's plan to bring the full Zumwalt class online with a hypersonic capability?
Not according to our plan. And so, we're working hard to make sure that stays out of the critical path for the delivery of Zumwalt's capability.
Okay. With only 3 ships in this class, can the Navy realistically meet the Indo-PACOM present requirements for this weapon system? Or is the force simply too small to provide persistent operational impact?
So we're looking at crewing models for that to make sure that we're doing that right. You can see that it's almost a natural fit to what we did with SSGNs, where we had a blue and gold crew for that. So I'm looking at different models to actually maximize our operational availability of a 3-ship class, to actually keep one on station most of the time, and then rotate changes of command in theater.
Okay, thank you. Secretary Cow, the Navy has clearly prioritized low-cost, at-scale hypersonic systems with a $1.6 billion budget request to procure 4,157 MACE missiles. Can you highlight how multi-year procurement acquisitions have made this purchase possible, and how we could be applied to other munitions?
You guys allowing us to do multi-year procurement has really opened up the aperture for industry to actually invest into their development, and as well as give them the stable.
Gentleman's time's expired. Here, and I recognize the young lady from Maryland, Ms. Elfreth.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I think you're hearing the bipartisan nature. I don't think I've been in a committee hearing that is this bipartisan, especially on the shipbuilding front. I'd like to remind everybody that I represent Coast Guard Yard Baltimore, not yours, but they help you on occasion. 130-year yard that sometimes has 3 generations of workers who have been supporting this work. And as we think about easy ecosystems to tap into to meet this demand, I'd like to have that conversation, Mr. Secretary, if you'd be willing to have it in the next few weeks about.
Yes, ma'am. I think in a few weeks we will be talking intimately about some of these things.
Perfect. Another bipartisan issue you're hearing is this commitment to actually getting to our goal with amphibs. And I know that the budget right now has $6.2 billion for submarines, $7.2 for nuclear shipbuilder productivity, $6.7 for surface ships combined in terms of the industrial base investments. But I'm struggling to find our industrial base investments for amphibs. So where in the budget, Mr. Secretary or Admiral, is the Navy specifically investing to protect amphibious shipbuilding capacity at Ingalls from being displaced from competing interests?
Well, I think that's all part of the broader MIB money. So I don't know that Ingalls called out that it's not being part of that. I can get you the detail of what percentage Ingalls itself is getting of that, but they're certainly part of that. They're crucial to this, man.
I'd appreciate just that. I think that level of detail will help assuage some of the concern on both sides of the aisle. Mr. Secretary, I want to congratulate your family in advance on your son being commissioned next week. I wish I could be there. Votes have been called on Friday. I represent the United States Naval Academy on the board, as well as a few other members of this committee. And I know, thank you for being there. The superintendent told me you've spent a lot of time there. You understand, obviously, how incredibly important it is to the nation, but also it's suffering from a vulnerability that a lot of, by nature of Marine and Navy bases being close to water is suffering from a real challenge, which is flooding. We are fighting right now. I'm going to leave to try to get some extra funding for the Naval Academy, $86 million it needs just to be able to keep classes running on time. What's happening, though, is, as I'm sure you know, the urgency of flooding, we don't need to argue about the cause, it's happening, is displacing some other really important infrastructure needs across our Navy and Marine bases, including the Naval Academy. This is just the reality of the situation. So we were making, good, decent progress on it so far. I was a little surprised to see that the fiscal year 27 budget reduces domestic stormwater compliance funding by approximately 1/3 from where we were in last fiscal year. And again, the seas are going to keep rising. These projects are going to push out other important infrastructure priorities because we have to address them now. And I just want to flag for everybody at this table that I would love to see a more ambitious approach to protecting our bases from nuisance flooding, sunny day flooding. You're going to see at the Naval Academy. I think we need to be a little more aggressive and concerted when it comes to flooding. I do want to move on with my time to an opportunity. That was the challenge, an opportunity. Switching gears entirely, Pax River in Maryland has the largest anechoic chamber in the country. We're very proud of it. I want to thank you all for your investments in it over the years. You probably don't know it's so popular, it has a years-long backlog for testing. I think this is the moment when we're thinking about our capabilities, especially with our adversaries, catching up, that we should think about a second anechoic chamber just to relieve some of the pressure of that testing. I would love to invite you all to come down to Pax River. I know Congressman Hoyer this has been his life's work, to come down and see that anechoic chamber. Can I have time is of the essence, but I understand you're busy. I would love to show you that and try to figure out a way to get that second anechoic chamber built for our warfighters.
Yes, ma'am. We'll get down there.
You definitely have my commitment to come. If that's in the critical path of holding back things when we need another one, I'll certainly look at it.
Okay. I really appreciate it. I think there's a way to get this privately and publicly funded and get the best deal for our warfighters. I have one more question that I'm just going to off the cuff this, because we've been talking about partnering with our allies like Finland and Korea to meet the moment that is required of all of us to get this shipbuilding kickstarted again in this country. If you were sitting on our side of the table, though, I think you heard some skepticism and some intrigue. How do we get you to tie your hands that you're actually going to bring those jobs back to the States? We're going to go overseas, get that, training, but we need to bring that capability back so we can expand our own industrial base. How would you tie your own hands?
Ma'am, again, we're Americans and we need to build things in America as much as possible. But right now, even at the ATS, the auxiliary tug salvage, it's been on. We've had a need for this since 2016. It's still not built yet. I mean, that's a salvage ship. I mean, it's a tugboat, really, a large tugboat, and that's why we need to look at every single aspect.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentlelady from South Carolina, Ms. Mace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. South Carolina's low country is home to critical marine and naval assets. Joint Base Charleston hosts essential naval tenant commands, including the Naval Nuclear Power Training Command and Training Unit Charleston and the Naval Information Warfare Center Atlantic. We've been making Marines at Parris Island since 1915, and just up the road at the Marine Corps Air Station Beaufort hosts and trains active duty F-35 and FA-18 Hornet squadrons. When we hear them flying overhead, we say it's the sound of freedom in South Carolina. Our community is incredibly supportive of our servicemen and servicewomen and proud to play such an important role in our national defense, and there is still room to grow. So my first question today is for General Smith. As part of the Barracks 2030 initiatives, what improvements can we see to recruit barracks at Parris Island?
Ma'am, that is one of my highest priorities, is getting those recruit barracks up to snuff, because frankly, they're not. We still have to maintain open squad bays. That's who we are. That's how we make Marines. But we have to improve the quality of those barracks because they are getting ancient.
Are we making progress on it?
We are, ma'am, but we're never making fast enough progress. As you know, the workforce in the coastal Carolinas is really the challenge. It's about making sure that they can be guaranteed steady, predictable work for years to come, so they don't go to work for the auto industry or go to work somewhere else, because once you lose that workforce, you don't.
And any idea, like timeline you think, or how long this will take?
Ma'am, it's going to be multiple years.
And General Smith, can you speak to the importance of funding the completion costs of new aircraft maintenance hangars at MCAS Beaufort?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Marine Corps Air Station Beaufort is our hub. Those maintenance hangars are absolutely required for our F-35s.
Do you have enough funding for them?
We do, ma'am. We can always use more, but we do have enough funding right now to make those maintenance hangars a reality. But again, it comes down to who can build those maintenance hangars, on what schedule can they build them, because those maintenance hangars, otherwise.
Are you struggling with finding the right
employees and right contractors to do that work? Because those F-35s, if they're sitting out in the sun, they're degrading. They need to be inside of a maintenance hangar to be able to do it.
Or the rain, right?
Yes, ma'am. Or in the
Right.
rain. So.
Okay. In fiscal year 26, Congress allocated the first tranche of funding for the nuclear power training facility simulation expansion at Joint Base Charleston. So, Admiral Caudle, can you speak to the status of this and the impact this will have on readiness and personnel and the personnel pipeline?
I can't give you where it is on the timeline, so I can take that for the record, but I can certainly tell you how vital it is. I mean, it's crucial to generating our nuclear propulsion students, and it's a critical path for us fielding our submarines and our aircraft carriers. So it's much appreciated, and it's inherent to the nuclear power pipeline training. But where that project is, I can get you the data.
Well, they're very excited about it down there. So over the last several years under the DHA model, we've seen Beaufort Naval Hospital transition from an inpatient treatment facility to an ambulatory care center. This has resulted in many recruits and Marines being referred out into the community, potentially leading to delays in care and a strain on the community health system. General Smith, how has this service change impacted, how has it impacted the timely treatment of recruits at Parris Island and Marines at MCAS Beaufort?
Well, ma'am, anytime, and especially in recruit training, anytime you have to send a recruit off of the depot to get care, you're exceeding or you're increasing the time they're spending away from training, and you're increasing the time it takes to build and make a Marine. So we obviously are in favor of having things onboarded onto our bases, but we also recognize that there's a limited number of physicians and nurses in the Naval Medical Corps, and we're struggling mightily to make sure we recruit enough of them and retain them, frankly.
And then Acting Secretary Chow, given the need for the timely access to care for our recruits and Marines and the needs of the service, what do you believe the future of Beaufort Naval Hospital should or will look like?
Congresswoman, again, down in Parris Island, my dear friend Brigadier General Williamson has done a great deal to make sure our recruits go down there, get the proper medical care, and going back to also housing. It's not just about the barracks for our Marines, but also the instructors. We can't have them living, an hour out where they can't afford it, and drive in every day, because they're really on call 24 hours a day, and that's what General Williamson has done so hard. He's worked so hard to partner with the privatized housing partners in order to provide good housing for our instructors as well.
We are the fastest growing state in the country, and therefore the cost of housing has risen exponentially over the years. So thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony today. And I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Bindeman.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses here. First, let me start by saying, General Smith, I fully endorse MEU U 3.0 and the force generating capabilities that come out of Quantico to support that concept, a base that I'm privileged and proud to represent thousands of Marines and Marine families. So it's a real gem, and I hope we continue to invest in that facility.
It is a crossroads of the Corps, sir, as you know.
Yes, sir.
It's our home to our education system.
Just switching gears now, I want to talk a little bit about the Navy's Navigation Plan 2022, which defines distributed maritime operations as dispersing the fleet to deny adversaries targetable concentrations of forces. In fact, I believe, Admiral Caudle, you referred to this sort of framework in your opening statement. Does DMO remain operative doctrine, or has the department abandoned it?
No, it remains operative. You know, it's the Navy's way to say expand and maneuver, this part of the joint warfighting concept.
Thank you.
It underwrites the way we do business.
Thank you. So the 2026 shipbuilding plan describes the Trump-class battleship as a forward command and control platform leading a surface action group. Does concentrating command authority, offensive fires, nuclear reactor into a single 35,000-ton hull advance DMO's core principle of denying adversaries high-value targets, Mr. Secretary?
Congressman, the nuclear battleship would basically be able to bring firepower very quickly to a place. I mean, we were able to move the Ford carrier strike group from the Ford, went from Venezuela to the Mediterranean.
I got it, but you're concentrating all of that into one hull. at one massive hull. And so I'm a former Army guy. I'm not an expert in naval warfare. But I'm going to quote retired Admiral James Stavridis, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, who wrote in Bloomberg about the proposed battleship that given today's drone swarms, stealthy submarines, hypersonic missiles, advanced torpedoes, offensive cyber weapons, putting lots of eggs in a handful of baskets doesn't make sense. China can field dozens of DF-26 ballistic missiles for under $1 billion. These are really about $20 million per missile. A single Trump-class battleship is estimated to cost $17 billion. What is the department's assessment of that cost exchange ratio, and has any independent wargame concluded that a vessel costing 1,000 times more than the missile designed to sink it represents a sound investment?
Congressman, we talk about these hypersonics and all the missiles that can sink it, but the ship is going over 1 nautical mile a minute. There's no hypersonic that can change course that quickly, and this is why we need this a large.
Have there been
we've had this requirement?
Have there been
for years.
Studies that have determined
yes,
that?
Sir. We've had requirements again since
in that
I was
case.
in OPNAV.
I would love to see that, because I and I'm sure others are skeptical of making a mass investment in a system that is literally 1,000 times more expensive than the missiles designed to sink it. So I would love to see that work being done. Now, the survivability here rests on lasers, railguns, and interceptors that don't exist yet. Is that correct?
Congressman, it's still the ship as it is right now can defend itself. I mean, it's got 200 VLS cells.
Do we have
everything from
railguns? Do we have railguns that are actually functional right now? Lasers and other.
That's for future, Congressman.
That's
right now,
future.
the ship as it is has 200 VLS cells that goes
Let me
from
ask you a
everything
question.
ESSM Block 2 to SM6 and SM3.
Since we're talking about the president has demanded delivery by 2028. The current plan shows an order placed in 2036. Are you committing to deliver the battleship by 2028, or what is the delivery timeframe here?
Sir, I think that it's realistic that that's a mid-2030 delivery since we've made it nuclear. And yes, there are railguns in existence. It's a linear motor. There's no physics complexity there. And to scale that on the battleship is long overdue. I can send a 50-pound projectile 500 miles from it at multiple repetitive rates. The asymmetric capability of that battleship is unmatched. And if I don't protect units, nothing across the joint force works, including B-21 or anything else. So counter-targeting is essential to all survivability of all elements of the joint force.
So this is my concern, Admiral and Secretary, is that this is a aesthetics or a project for the president that does not meet the current threat environment that we've seen in the Black Sea and repeatedly. And I'll give you one pitch, is that if you're going to develop these capabilities, come see what's available in Dahlgren, because that is where a tremendous amount of the Navy's R&D and so
Gentleman's
these
time
systems
has
are going to come
expired.
in place. It's going to come from Dahlgren. Thank you.
Mr. Bacon, you're recognized.
Thank you. I appreciate all three of you being here. I was thinking those two up there were going to go ahead of me, but I'm ready. Admiral Cottle, could you tell us a little bit about the USS Ford deployment? I understand it was out for 10 or 11 months. Could you just take a little time to brag on the crew and how?
Sir, thank you for that. You know, it is an incredible record-breaking deployment. It hasn't been that long since the Vietnam War. That's a backhanded compliment to the Navy. On one side, I wish I had more capacity to fly additional strike groups into theater. But on the other hand, the durability and the way we construct our ships actually shows what can be done with that new class. World record sortie generation rate on that class aircraft carrier. Started out, of course, down in South America with absolute resolve and Southern Spear. Sortied immediately into the Mediterranean and picked up right into Epic Fury. Did 5 Suez Canal transits.
Wow.
Had a major fire on board and sustained operations 3 days afterwards. And it's just, kick-ass and took names every single day. So we're going to give her a hero's welcome back on Saturday. And it's just an extraordinary ship, extraordinary crew, an extraordinary strike group, and the sailors I could not be more proud of.
Could you explain a little bit about how you resupply? Because there was some, I believe, misinformation on some of the food and things like that. But if you could set the record straight and how you resupply, I'd be grateful.
We monitor Class 1 food on our ships and our strike groups, every single day. I get a report on it every day. The lowest I've seen is 4 days of the cyclic menu. That means they're in their normal menu, serving what they're supposed to serve, with 4 days still remaining. That's the lowest. We try to keep it above in the teens. And we're doing that from Diego Garcia and, of course, in the Mediterranean, ports from the Mediterranean. And so those things are continuing to roll. It's offensive to me that people put out that our culinary specialists serve food that's not nutritious, that doesn't look appetizing, and it's not world class to the way we do culinary arts on board our ships. And if anyone's ever served on a Navy ship knows that it's world class.
Well,
So that's completely
I did one
fake
tour
news.
in '96 in the Persian Gulf, and I knew I had to work out because there was good food on there. Had to find a place to work out on the where I couldn't. But I just want to take a moment to praise the men and women on the USS Ford and all the folks that, the battle staff that accompany that. And I want to praise the families too. They didn't expect a 10-month or 11-month deployment. They expected probably 6 months. And so we appreciate the service and sacrifice. I got a follow-on question dealing with the TACAMO. I appreciate the mission of the TACAMO. I'm from Offutt Air Force Base, commanded the base. I used to fly on the Looking Glass mission when I was a one-star. I understand that this mission is going to a C-130, and the Air Force is picking up this mission. Could you talk a little bit about, whether it's the Secretary or the Admiral, how are you going to do this transition to the Air Force? Do we have a plan yet?
Well, we can share the answer here. I'll kick off. But, our E-6B Mercury is aging out, it's 707. It's been a challenge to keep it maintained, a depot, and we've run the wings off of that. So as we bring in the E-130J as a program of record for that, we will transition the TACAMO portion of that mission command over to that airframe. The Air Force still has the ABICAP mission. That's what you're referring to. And so I think there's an imperative there and a mandate that the Air Force determine how they're going to provide the ABICAP mission to U.S. Strategic Command. I look forward to working with the Air Force on that. There's a lot of solutions that we could do collaboratively to that to make that a joint solution. And so I can be part of that discussion.
For the record, we have weapons that can hit us in 15 minutes, and there's future technology that's even worse. We need an airborne or some kind of emergency airborne command and control that can respond if the White House, Pentagon, or STRATCOM is hit. And that's what this Looking Glass mission is. I've been a part of it. And I just want to make sure that the Pentagon, not just the Navy and the Air Force, do we have a plan? Because it's all about nuclear command and control deterrence. There. One last question with my remaining 50 seconds. We're burning through SM-6s and SM-2s. Like the first day of the war is probably 2 or 3 months worth of production. How do we get to the point? Well, we're going to have to do something different here where we're doubling production lines. Do we have a plan?
Congressman, yes, we do. We're looking at even just to recertify these munitions. Like, for example, the Tomahawk. Look, I grew up poor. Things don't just expire, right? Just because the contractor said it does. Bread, you rub some water in it, microwave 15 seconds, it's ready to eat. So likewise, we were able to recertify hundreds of Tomahawk missiles to launch out there from Class Echo and Foxtrot to November. It's likewise with recertification of the Standard missiles. That's what we did, sir.
We need to double production, I believe, and we've got to have a budget to do it. With that, I yield back. Thank you.
Mr. Bell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for being here today. Secretary Cow, last week I sent you a bipartisan, bicameral letter regarding the effort to relocate the Missouri Army, National Guard, Marine Corps Reserves, and Navy Reserve units currently located on 34 acres of property at St. Louis Lambert International Airport. The current facilities are outdated and need to be replaced with modernized long-term facilities. At the same time, these units must be relocated in order for Lambert to move forward with its multi-billion-dollar modernization and expansion project. In return, Lambert has identified a new larger parcel of land to serve as the permanent long-term location for the Guard and Marine Corps units, while the Missouri National Guard has identified historic buildings at Jefferson Barracks Air National Guard Station that can be renovated to support the Navy Reserve mission. Interim facilities would be used until those permanent locations are completed. The Missouri Army National Guard and Marine Corps Reserve have already expressed support for the temporary relocation proposal, including the use of interim facilities in North St. Louis. However, the Navy Reserve has not yet agreed to move forward with the temporary relocation plan, despite the significant economic and infrastructure implications associated with delaying the Lambert expansion project. Therefore, the proposal cannot move forward. This is not simply an airport issue. This project represents one of the largest economic development and modernization efforts in the St. Louis region, and delays could have major downstream impacts on construction timelines, regional growth, and future investment. The St. Louis region is a center of innovation, a major defense and manufacturing hub, and plays a critical role in strengthening our national security. St. Louis has shown that we are a reliable partner, and we are asking that you all be a reliable partner in return. So today I'm asking you to personally look into the issue and work with the Navy Reserve to understand the necessity and urgency of this temporary relocation. And will you commit to having your staff work with my office and local stakeholders to help resolve the current stalemate and move this project forward?
Congressman, we will answer your letter, and we will work with you, sir.
Thank you. And then, Secretary Cowell, the Navy's FAXX program will play a critical role in maintaining carrier air wing superiority against increasingly advanced threats in the Indo-Pacific. Given its importance, how is the Navy coordinating with the Air Force on sixth-generation fighter development to ensure interoperability where appropriate, while avoiding unnecessary duplication and inefficiencies between FAXX and NGAD efforts?
Congressman, thank you for that question. This is why we're having the Undersecretary of War for Acquisition Sustainment be kind of the arbitrator, make sure we're not making the same mistakes, just learning from the Air Force what they're doing. And by the end of the summer, we will have a down select for the FAXX so that we move forward. Again, learning from the Air Force, we will be able to accelerate and move that program out further. I mean, again, carrier air wing, if you saw in Epic Fury and Absolute Resolve, that's the best way to get firepower downrange quickly. And the F-35 has done amazingly well, but we need a sixth-generation aircraft to thwart the next threat, sir.
Thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Higgins, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Cowell, much of the discussion around maritime industrial base focuses on major shipyards, but smaller regional shipbuilders are critical to meeting Navy demands. I think we can agree with that statement, and in the interest of time, can I humbly request a meeting, sir, with your senior staff in June, directly with your office regarding small shipyards in Louisiana?
Absolutely, sir. I'll be there.
Thank you, sir. I look forward to that meeting and our staffs working together. Admiral, Joint Reserve Base New Orleans plays a critical role and remains strategically important installation for both homeland defense and global force projection. I'm sure we agree. And they provide aggressor aircraft that prepare our combat aviators to succeed in forward theaters. Louisiana's reserve units have consistently delivered for the Navy, delivered operational capability at a high level, but aging platforms are creating increased sustainment and mission capability challenges. That statement is something I'm quite certain you're 100% in agreement with, and we can agree that there's a great deal of importance in readiness, pilot retention, and maintaining surge capacity in the reserve component. And I commend the Navy for addressing these challenges and for addressing fighter recapitalization efforts, such as transitioning from the legacy F-5 aircraft to the newer FA-18 platforms at Joint Reserve Base New Orleans. However, there was a but coming, right? However, it's reported that necessary simulators and maintenance contracts will not arrive in time to support the transition. Can you speak to that? What's the Navy doing? What can we do to help? Is there anything I'm not doing as as a Louisiana representative. Please speak to that.
So there's nothing more frustrating than get a capability and not be able to train on it before you try to field it and make sure that pilots are ready to go and they've got the simulators and tubs, as we call them, that we're ready to actually do that. So let me take that for action to understand where we are in fielding that there and what the requirement is and if it's behind, why, and get back to you on what we're going to do to shore that up.
Yeah, I would look forward to that communication. Can I humbly ask you as well, sir, for a senior staff meeting with my staff for an update on that within the next 3 or 4 weeks?
Of course. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, for all of you, let me say that it's a lot of money, and it's the people's treasure, and we're going to watch it very carefully, but we want to invest in this era of development of an indomitable military. And none of us up here who question the professionalism and the intentions of your request, but we're going to have to look at every dollar very carefully. I'm sure you concur. I'm going to address pilot shortages for just a moment. My dad, I think, is one of the most concerning sort of internal threats that we face to our readiness and capability and our ability to project force. My dad was a Navy pilot in World War II, and it was fascinating to be his son. I can tell you, I ended up joining the Army. Maybe so that would have one interest in football weekend per year. But the challenges that the Navy and the Marine Corps face across the spectrum, just pilot retention and qualified pilots staying in uniform. I commend what's being done, but I ask, is the Navy and the Marine Corps addressing the culture within the pilot realm that pulls these guys out where they leave the uniform of the United States Navy or Marine Corps and put on a uniform of Delta or United?
Well, sir, I can tell you that we're in a pretty good place on our pilot retention. We're paying them a pretty handsome bonus to stay, and they want to be Marines. They signed up to fly tactical aircraft.
That's what I like to hear.
But there is a draw by the commercial industry to pull them away, paying them an exorbitant salary, and so we're always
time is
struggling.
expired.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sorensen, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to welcome Secretary Cow, Admiral Cottle, and General Smith for being here in committee. I am honored to be the only professional meteorologist serving in the Congress. Before the people elected me to serve them, I served in a different way. As a broadcast meteorologist, telling the moms and dads when to go in the basement for a tornado or when to stay off the roads for a blizzard. But that job set me up to be able to do this job today. I would never have been successful in my previous career if I didn't have the weather modeling data that was accurate. Here on the Armed Services Committee, I now look at weather through a national security lens. I'll never forget the chance that I had meeting sailors in Norfolk, Virginia on the USS Abraham Lincoln in 2017. Navy meteorologists who were forecasting not tornadoes and blizzards, but rather keeping our warfighters safe by keeping the most important Americans away from the worst storms. So in your witness statement, Admiral Cottle, you mentioned that the Navy has surpassed its recruiting goal. Can you share whether you surpassed your recruiting goal for the Navy weather enterprise, including meteorology, oceanography, and orographer mates?
Sir, they're not on my radar that we're behind there, so I'm assuming that we're on plan. I can go look at those exact numbers, but I can guarantee you that no one values it more than me. And across the whole spectrum, it is part of our warfighting apparatus. It's so much more than just weather, as you know.
Right.
It's about the ocean. It's about space. It's about precision navigation and precise navigation and timing. So all of this is all tied into that career field. So you have my commitment to make sure if I'm deficient there, I will get back to you on those numbers.
Because there's so much that we don't yet know. There are so many discoveries that we're going to need scientists and folks to advance our understanding. of Meteorology. I fought hard to ensure that the DoD reversed its decision last year to cut critical satellite weather data to NOAA. Degradation in NOAA's data makes forecasting more difficult, and that directly hurts our military readiness. The Naval Meteorology and Oceanography Command relies on NOAA data, and our warfighters rely on both the Navy and NOAA to execute missions safely. To my next question, to the Admiral and also to Secretary Cow, can you speak briefly about the importance of METOC and how the Navy partners with NOAA to ensure vital forecasting for our troops?
Well, I mean, it goes to safety of ship. It goes to planned operations. It goes to when we replenish, our ships. It goes to modeling acoustic data for sound velocity profiles. It goes for how our weapons perform. It goes to how we do intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. It's inherently, because it's part of the Earth. It goes again, how we do P&T. All of that's tied into the METOC portfolio. So I value it greatly. The command there at Stennis, I value greatly, and how it actually we actually field that and build those communities of practice, and the NAV I4 community of practice is part of something I hold very dear.
Thank you, Admiral.
And Congressman, every year at the United States Naval Academy, there's a handful of billets for the meteorology and oceanography majors. So it's a very coveted ability for them to compete for that billet, those 5 billets, to go into that specialty field. And like the Admiral said, I mean, everything revolves around the weather. I mean, we don't want an amphibious landing. Again, unfortunately, history has shown what happens when you don't guess where the tide changes are. Right. And also, we can't lose ships that are sailing into harm's way also. I mean, we need to avoid ships. We do sorties all the time, and that's thanks to the meteorology community, sir.
And we can't just use what we have learned in the past. How important is it that we do focus on how our climate is changing?
Sir, we always need, the climate is always changing. I mean, it's constantly changing, and again, that's why we need meteorologists to tell us where to go and when the best time to strike is. I mean, again, in special operations, we need to make sure that we're not doing during full moon and during a major storm, and so we need to be able to insert our people in quickly and safely.
Sir, I would just add one additional thing. I normally don't jump back in like this, but it's also very important for unmanned. And so, our unmanned autonomous vehicles out there, UAVs, and understand the weather they're incurring and modeling that and knowing how to employ them effectively. So it's inherently tied to unmanned.
Last question to Mr. Secretary. How closely do you work with NOAA to make sure that we're working together?
As of right now, sir, I can't answer that question, but I know in the past I've worked very closely with NOAA for everything from searching from the bottom of the ocean for like John F. Kennedy Jr. and his wife.
The gentleman's time.
I'd love to be part of that partnership.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Mr.
Chairman.
Davis, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and to the ranking member and to the witnesses who are here today. Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point continues to reach new heights. For the second year in a row, the installation earned distinction as the Marine Corps Air Station of the Year, and we indeed are proud of that, General Smith. Given the 2026 aviation plan rollout, can you confirm that the Marine Corps intends to keep all 6 F-35 Lightning II squadrons whole at Cherry Point?
Sir, we do.
Okay, thank you so much. Shifting gears, I've heard from so many in Eastern North Carolina, which this has been a topic that's been ongoing for years, and that's the victims of toxic water contamination at Camp Lejeune. I've continued to hear from families. The Wilson family have shared their story, how it impacts the entire family. And literally, we've seen people who've already now died. Acting Secretary Cow, 2,635 lawsuits been filed with the U.S. District Court of the Eastern District, North Carolina, and only 400 settlements have gone through. What is the department's plan of action? And that may include any interagency cooperation with DOJ. Would love to hear from you in terms of what's the plan for these families.
Well, again, sir, you mentioned these are ongoing litigations, and I can't talk about this, but we're always committed to take care of our sailors and Marines and their families, sir.
And shifting gears once again, Newport News Shipbuilding, we have over 1,000 North Carolinians that are going to the shipyard. And I'm really pleased with the work that's taking place there. Let me ask both Acting Secretary Cowell and Admiral Cottle, what are the primary bottlenecks that you see specifically with ramping up the production of American-made parts for our nuclear-powered submarines and the next generation vessels to prepare for a potential Indo-Pacific conflict?
Congressman, thank you for that. The supply is not 100% the issue. It's just the manufacturer, the large companies are not telling the small manufacturers what or the supply chain what they need, and this is why it was so important for this body to allow us to have multi-year procurement, so they can tell the suppliers, hey, we're going to need this because we're going to build one LPD every year. These are exactly what we need, but I'll defer to Admiral Cottle also.
Well, first of all, just say go Wolfpack and go Tar Heels, just to get that on the record. But the, the 1,000, North Carolinians heading to Huntington Ingalls Newport News Shipbuilding is exactly what right looks like. And so it is the flow of this workforce at that level from all the surrounding states into that maritime industrial kind of epicenter there in Virginia is what we need to keep the right talent, the right retention, the right recruiting, all that on track. It's a massive question what you've asked, but we've got a lot of single vendor lock going on out there. We've got a lot of long lead time material challenges. We've got a lot of upgrades that need to be done on the yards. And so it's a big question. But I would just tell you, and I'd be happy to come and talk to you personally about it, but at the heart of it, it is all about the workforce. It's about turning wrenches, putting bead wells down, and planning and executing the maintenance on time and on schedule.
Well, let me say, Admiral, go Wolfpack, go Tar Heels, and we really appreciate your service to our country, and same thing to our Secretary and to the General Smith. Thank you, and God bless for the work that you're doing.
Dr. Conaway, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, witnesses, for presenting yourself to us today. Before getting to my prepared remarks and question, Secretary Cowell, you mentioned, and it just let me set up just a little bit. We've heard from the administration that the Iranian ability to project force has been decimated. They can't fire any missiles. They are 90% attrited. They're flat on their back. I heard you say in your remarks that, and you might have misspoken, and so I want clarification. Have the Iranians been firing at American assets, or are they firing at other countries in the region, or both? Because it comes to this question of whether and when Congress is going to speak on this war, this Congress's authority to declare war. And so I'm just curious whether or not the Iranians are firing at U.S. assets in that region.
Congressman, after we stopped the hostilities and we were talking to them for peace negotiations, again, they have a lack of command control right now. No one really knows who's in charge over there, and so you have these onesies and twosies go out and they're launching. They dug out from their rebels and they pulled out a couple of missiles and they shoot at these merchant ships that are coming by. And that's why our ships are protecting those ships as well. I mean, there's always.
So I mean, I'm sorry, sir. Are they firing at American US
firing
assets
at
or not? Because that sounds very much like a warlike activity, and the Congress has yet to speak to the American people on the question of whether or not we ought to be at war. So I'm just curious what's happening with respect to our assets in the region of operation.
They're shooting at merchant ships, sir.
Okay. Let me move on to other remarks I want to make in a question. The United States continues to exist within a global economy where global supply chains, international trade, and manufacturing are all interconnected. This reality is directly tied to U.S. naval shipbuilding initiatives outlined in both the FY27 naval budget and the U.S. Navy shipbuilding plan. Specifically, the U.S. Navy shipbuilding plan released in May 2026 emphasizes the need to revitalize our industrial base in order to comply with the President's executive order. The U.S. manufacturing base has holistically been in decline since 1979, and both military and commercial shipbuilding have declined alongside it. This long-term erosion, compounded by the administration's cuts to the Department of Labor and the Department of Education, has weakened the domestic workforce and reduced access to critical education and training pipelines. Specifically, the President's budget proposal would cut the Department of Labor's funding by nearly 26%, eliminating vital programs such as Job Corps and the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs. As stated in a 2025 article by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, the United States shipbuilding enterprise has struggled to stay abreast of best practices in shipbuilding in recent decades, and in no small part because of the small size of the U.S. commercial shipbuilding base, which tends to be where innovation arises in the sector worldwide. A lack of domestic manufacturing initiatives coupled with the Trump administration's reckless use of tariffs has cultivated a manufacturing environment that is both disproportionate to the size and cost. Secretary Cao, in the new U.S. shipbuilding plan, your forward emphasizes the need to revitalize the American industrial base. What are your priority initiatives to help build the capacity and capability of both the domestic shipbuilding industry and vendors that support them? And I certainly want to echo the comments that my colleagues have made about how important it is that while we might borrow technology, copy it, use it here, that our ships and other warfighting material be made here in the United States. So I appreciate your answer to my question, sir.
Congressman, I know this is very important to you, and it's very important to everybody in this room also to build the ships. We need 540,000 Americans to roll up their sleeves and work right now, and this is what we're trying to do. And you allowing us to do multi-year procurement allows that. It allows for industry to say, okay, this is what we're going to do for the next 7 years. And that's why I want to thank the Congress for allowing us to do that, and these are levers we need to pull in order to get shipbuilding going, sir.
Yes, and thank you for that. Admiral Cottle, how does the U.S. Navy intend to increase civilian workforce development and retention in a sector that has been steadily declining for the last 45 years? We heard from CEOs that there are some, I think, pilot programs that are designed to help bring in a workforce that's going to be specifically
The gentleman's time is expired.
Gosh, I'm right through it. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. It's been 3+ hours. Congratulations to all of you. I've got a couple of thoughts, a couple of questions, and then we're going to be on our way because we all have very important things to do, but nothing more important than what we're doing here in this committee room. This is not Democrat or Republican. This is about Democrats and Republicans working together on armed services to get the right results for the national defense. So I want to throw one acronym out at you, ATM. Money is not endless in an ATM, but in this particular instance, it stands for all things maritime. As we've listened over the last 3 hours to everybody make their statements, your responses, they have been thoughtful, but we still have to focus on all things maritime and get that broader base, whether it's the industrial base, whether it's the military ability to plan, project, and implement. All of these things work together. So ATM, just remember, all things maritime, but money is not unlimited, and time is finite too. Okay, so no horse is too dead to beat, right? Okay, so we're going to resurrect right now the subject of the amphibious fleet. Admiral Cottle, over the years, the Navy budget consistently prioritized other platforms while the Marine Corps warned of a crisis in amphibious lift. As the ultimate arbiter, are you directing the Department of the Navy to adequately fund the amphibious warship procurement and maintenance required for this presence? Or is there something we've missed and there's a strategic decision that lowers the Marine Corps in that priority list?
Sir, I am directing that everything we can do to maintain our amphibious fleet be done. I fully recognize the journey that we've been on and how it got to this state. I own it. I'm working with the General, Eric Smith, to fix it. It has my full commitment. It's getting full funding. It's getting full oversight and every lever I can pull to improve the readiness of the amphibious force.
Okay, thank you. General Smith, could you please briefly talk about the importance of the medium landing ship to Marine Corps operations, including your overall acquisition objective and preferred timeline for getting these ships into the fleet?
Sir, I can. The LSM, or Landing Ship Medium, is a crucial inter-island connector. It's what moves us through and about the first island chain. It moves our things like our Nemesis battery, Navy Marine Expeditionary Ship Interdiction System, and our Rogue Nemesis system. So the number is to be decided. You know, it's about 30, give or take, but we're still determining those numbers. But it's designed to move those units about and through the first island chain to be a limited target, to be disaggregated and to reaggregate forces in order to move throughout that first island chain and to sustain themselves, to move munitions batteries, munitions supplies, and to move Marines.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, it's great to see you here. I agree with the Commandant's belief that the LSM is critical to the Marine Corps warfighting mission, which is why I think it's imperative that the Navy does everything it can to get as many ships delivered as quickly as possible. That requires sufficient funding, as we know, to fully utilize the production capacity of LSM shipbuilders, including Fincantieri Marinette Marine, which is able to construct 4 LSMs per year. I was up at their facilities not that long ago, and it's quite impressive. What are your plans for resourcing the LSM program to meet the 4-ship per year target and maintain the shipbuilding workforce, a majority of which commute from my district into Tony Weed's district to go to work?
Congressman, we have that in our budget this year. That's why it's so imperative that we pass this bill, sir, because time is of the essence, and these ships are not going to build themselves. We need to be able to tell industry this is what we want, and we're going to lock in the design and then move forward from there, sir.
Okay. And I want to leave you.
If I could add just 2 things that I think are important to that question is proven design. So it's this LST 100. We're using the Damon design, and for the first time, the Navy's actually going to use a vessel construction manager for the oversight of that build. So both of those are things that are going to get that delivered on time.
Great, thank you. Well, and to close this out, you know what the term shell game? Okay. Well, I would suggest to you, if you look at it, potentially we've been playing a hull game for too long. It's time for the hull game to end and the ships to be built, deployed to the fight, to humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, which is a lot of what our MEUs do when they're not in the fight. But it's that worldwide presence that our amphibious-ready fleet shows the world that we're serious about what we do. We just need the seriousness to result in ships that are floating and Marines that are aboard. And with that, unless there's anything else, this hearing is adjourned. I thank everybody for your time and your patience.
Completely deranged.
Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you. Thank you for watching. We will be back with another one. You guys are awesome. God bless you. God bless your family. Shout out to every single member of this channel. You guys support. You guys always inspire. So God bless you. God bless America. And God bless every one of y'all.